Yo, Atlas speaking and welcome to part 5 of What If I Was Reborn into One Punch Man as a low-ranked hero with dual Kamui. Let the tale begin. Chapter 101, Dark Matter Thieves. Shinji, you can tell the future now? This so-called god-level disaster isn't just something you made up to mess with us, right? Tatsumaki asked, her green hair swaying slightly as she turned to Shinji, surprise flashing in her eyes. You will see soon enough, Shinji replied, his tone calm and steady. The argument with Tatsumaki should end shortly. Tatsumaki tilted her head, a doubtful look forming. God-level disaster. Divine might. Are you sure you did not get it wrong? This is not the time for jokes. I still have cram school later. Child Emperor's words drew glances from the other heroes. Most of the S-class group shared his skepticism. They either believed that no such thing as a god-level disaster could appear so easily, or they thought it could not be predicted with certainty. Only Bang and Genos showed clear signs of concern, aware of Shinji's abilities and prepared to trust his prediction. Saitama, however, seemed entirely uninterested in the discussion, focusing only on whether this disaster could give him a battle worth remembering. The floor beneath them suddenly trembled with force, shaking the walls and furniture as if an earthquake had struck. What's going on? Is this building under attack? Genos sprang to his feet. That is impossible. This is the Hero Association headquarters. Supralloy Darkshine said, still stunned by the sudden tremor. Shinji remained seated, his expression unchanged. He already knew what was happening. The Skyfall King had arrived, but that threat was no more dangerous to him than the Deep Sea King. The real problem was the one following behind, Boros and the crew. Outside the headquarters, several winged birdmen circled the sky, launching an assault on the building. At their head was the Sky King, his form and sharp features resembling a Tengu from ancient legends. Once we wipe out these heroes, the surface world will be ours, he declared with ambition. Follow me, your king. Before he could finish, several of his warriors were struck by an unseen force and dropped from the sky, their bodies crashing into the streets below. The Sky King looked up in confusion. Above, a vast shadow spread across tens of thousands of meters, casting the bright blue sky into complete darkness. Out of nowhere, an enormous warship appeared, stretching more than 10,000 meters in length. It was the flagship of the Dark Matter Thieves. A moment later, the warship's energy cannon roared to life, releasing a devastating beam toward the city. The explosion tore through almost the entirety of City A in an instant, reducing it to ruins. Fortunately, Shinji had already pushed for the evacuation of every citizen, preventing a disaster that could have claimed tens of thousands of lives. In the chaos, the Sky King was struck down by Melzergard, guardian of the warship. His left arm had shifted into a colossal hammer, and with a single strike, he crushed the Sky King without effort. Melzergard stood tall, a monstrous figure with 5 separate heads, vast demonic wings, and a humanoid body. He was one of Boros's 3 strongest warriors, the elite of the Dark Matter Thieves, all of them dragon-level threats whose strength ranged from mid to upper dragon class. What was that thing just now? One of Melzergard's heads asked. I do not know, another answered. I saw something flying and hit it, the third replied. I think it was fun, said the fourth. Spaceship, protect, mission. The fifth murmured, each head speaking with its own mind, their voices overlapping in a strange and unsettling chorus. No more life signs detected. Yeah. Have we already killed all the life forms? I think it was fun. Still, must not, be careless. While Melzergard searched for any remaining signs of life, movement stirred deep within the ruins. Beneath a pile of shattered concrete and twisted steel, someone was struggling to push the debris away. A moment later, a man in full armor emerged, dust cascading from his battered form. The metal plates had protected him from the worst of the destruction, leaving him unharmed. He was Ian, the second-ranked A-class hero and a disciple of Atomic Samurai. He had come to City A alongside his master and had been staying here temporarily until the S-class emergency meeting concluded. Never had he imagined such a catastrophe would strike without warning. The scene before him was unrecognizable. Everything in sight lay in ruins, the ground split and broken, with only the Hero Association headquarters still standing in the distance. Ian's instinct suddenly flared. His head snapped upward, and his eyes locked on a massive ship hovering ominously in the sky. What is that? Is all this destruction it's doing? Shock contorted his expression, quickly replaced by a steely anger. A shadow loomed behind him. He turned to see a towering figure, each of its 5 grotesque heads larger than his entire body. Melzergaard raised both arms high and brought them down in a crushing strike. Ian's helmet dented under the force, but he slipped free in time. With killing intent that strong, did you really think I wouldn't notice? His voice was cold and steady. Sliding his left foot back, he lowered his stance and gripped the hilt of his blade. In one swift motion, steel flashed, and Melzergaard's neck separated from his shoulders. Inside the headquarters, chaos erupted. Ah! Sitch clutched his head, his thoughts spiraling. Impossible! The prophecy came true this quickly? Cydia was wiped out in an instant. On the conference table, a massive screen displayed the city's shattered remains. Sitch's mind then raced. He remembered Shinji insisting earlier that all civilians in City A be evacuated. Could Shinji have already foreseen this devastation? Our building is still intact? Bang's voice was low and grim. This headquarters was built by Metal Knight. Its durability far exceeds any shelter, Sitch replied urgently, but everything outside is gone. The attack had been so sudden that no one had time to react. In any case, let's go outside and assess the situation, Master. Genos turned toward Shinji, only to find his seat empty. Shinji, I'm going to check outside right now. If this so-called god-level disaster turns out to be nothing, I won't forgive you, Tatsumaki declared, arms crossed, her confidence and arrogance plain. But before she could take another step, she realized Shinji was already gone. Huh? Where did he go? She muttered. If he's already gone up, then I should make my move too. In that instant, Saitama leapt straight up from his spot, tearing a gaping hole through what was meant to be the most durable building ever constructed, the opening stretching all the way to the roof. Outside, Ian's sword blurred through the air, hacking Melzergaard apart again and again. Each time, the alien's body reformed instantly, his regeneration nearly flawless. A combative creature. And very cautious. Kill him. I like him. Kill him. Melzergaard's hands shifted, transforming into cannons. Energy flared, and a massive blast surged toward Ian. Ian's eyes narrowed. The fact that his opponent had survived multiple lethal slashes was already alarming, but now the sudden appearance of the energy blast forced his expression into sharp focus. Just then, a figure appeared between them. The newcomer gripped a kunai, forming a flying thunder god barrier that absorbed the energy projectile in an instant. Huh? Melzergaard's 5 heads voiced confusion as the very same blast reappeared right in front of him. At his feet lay a small, unremarkable kunai that had gone unnoticed until now. Chapter 102, Melzergaard. Boom! The energy blast Melzergaard had fired struck its own body, blowing a massive hole in its chest as blood sprayed out. However, it seemed largely unfazed. All 5 of its heads spoke in turn. Injured by its own attack. What happened? No idea. I like it. Don't get careless, stay alert. In the blink of an eye, Melzergaard's body regenerated. Not only that, its form began to change, splitting apart into 5 humanoid monsters, each corresponding to one of its heads. Ian was now drenched in cold sweat as he looked at the figure who had suddenly appeared before him. He felt fear like never before, like death itself had respawned before him. If not for that person's intervention, he might already be missing a piece of himself. You are. He had only seen the stranger's back and was about to ask their name when a flash of a blade instantly cut all 5 of Melzergaard's newly split bodies clean in half. Ian, are you alright? It was Atomic Samurai, who had just arrived. And Kamui, Was it you who just protected my disciple? Shinji did not respond to Atomic Samurai, since what was standing there was only a wooden clone. The clone could speak, heck even dance, but he simply chose not to. Too much of a drag. Shinji's real body? He was already inside the alien ship. Master, be careful. Blades have little effect on this thing. Ian quickly warned his sensei. Atomic Samurai, however, didn't seem concerned. Facing the five-headed monster charging at him again, he drew his sword and unleashed a single slash. That strike shredded the creature into countless tiny pieces. Confident in his work, Atomic Samurai didn't even glance back. Seeing this, Ian assumed the enemy was defeated. But just as he relaxed, he noticed the fragments behind his master merging back together. What the? Before his eyes, the remains of the 5 humanoid bodies fused into a single massive form, 1 head, but 5 pairs of eyes. Atomic Samurai, sensing something, turned and stared at Melzergard in surprise. Keek. So this planet does have life forms capable of standing against me. Melzergard let out a chilling laugh. Good! Come and play with us. At that moment, Bang and Metal Bat also arrived. Atomic Samurai, we're here to help, Bang said, hands clasped behind his back. Despite the grim look on his face, his demeanor was that of an old man taking a leisurely stroll. Meanwhile, Pori prisoners circled around to get behind Melzergard. Sensing danger, Melzergard turned its head, only to be met by Pori prisoner's incoming fist. At that moment, Pori prisoner recalled what the Deep Sea King had once told him, that each punch must be full of killing intent, every strike aimed to crush. In that instant, like a disciple finally grasping his master's teaching, he sprouted a pair of Dark Angel wings. Dark Angel Impact. Aside from the S-class heroes fighting Melzergard, several others had followed the massive hole Saitama had smashed through, reaching the rooftop of the Hero Association headquarters. Tatsumaki, Child Emperor, Genos, Superalloy Darkshine, and the just-arrived king had gathered there. The rest of the S-class heroes had either withdrawn for now or outright fled. Silver Fong and the others are dealing with the enemies on the ground. I think they can handle it, but the real problem is that huge spaceship floating in the sky. How are we supposed to deal with that? Child Emperor said, gazing at the massive vessel with a helpless expression. King, as the strongest man on the surface, do you have any ideas? Superalloy Darkshine asked, looking toward King, who had just struggled his way out of the hole. Genos also turned to him, clearly interested in this so-called strongest man on the surface, as if the other S-class heroes all admired him. King had barely managed to steady himself when he found everyone's eyes on him. On the outside, he appeared calm and composed, but inside he was panicking hard. Thump! 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 The strange sound of his King engine was nothing more than his pounding heartbeat from sheer nervousness, though everyone else had always mistaken it as the sign he had entered combat mode. I don't have any means to attack an enemy floating in the air, so I can't help, King said, forcing himself to appear calm even though his heart was about to leap out of his chest. While that unidentified flying object hasn't made a move yet, we should hurry and find Metal Knight. Huh? What a disgrace! And you call yourself the strongest man? Tatsumaki snapped, showing no intention of sparing his pride. Calm down, little Tatsumaki. If you make King angry, he'll kill you, Superalloy Darkshine quickly tried to smooth things over. Forget it! You're all useless anyway. I'll handle them myself, Tatsumaki said sharply. I'll go too. I can try attacking from the ground to see if it works, Genos offered. Tatsumaki turned and shot him a cold glare. Did you not hear me just now? I said I don't need you. Genos fell silent, eyes twitching from sheer annoyance. This little fuck. Genos, I get how you feel, but if you provoke her, you'll get killed, Darkshine murmured again, playing the peacemaker. Respecting the Dark Fighter, this time, Genos held his temper. At that moment, a figure suddenly appeared beside him. Master? You're back? I thought you had already infiltrated the inside of that ship, Genos said in surprise. Tatsumaki also turned toward Shinji, immediately taunting him. What's wrong? Scared, so you're hiding here? Well, fine, I guess I'll just have to protect you. She clearly still held a grudge over what happened with the Ten-Tails earlier. Shinji ignored her, replying instead to Genos. This is just one of my clones. My real body has already entered the ship. Although he could leave the ground battle to Tatsumaki, he kept a clone here just in case. After all, the biggest threat was Boros's collapsing star roaring cannon. You're ignoring me again? Tatsumaki burst out, flying straight to Shinji. Where's your real body? I'll go in and take out their leader right now. That would end this whole thing, wouldn't it? Chapter 103, Super Shinra Tensei. Facing Tatsumaki's unreasonable request, Shinji paused for a moment before sighing. Fine. I'll handle the defense on the ground. To Tatsumaki's surprise, Shinji actually agreed to her rather casual request. Are you sure? That wooden clone of yours isn't just for show, right? Now it was Tatsumaki who seemed concerned about whether Shinji could protect the heroes on the ground. The only reason she hadn't gone straight into the ship was that she couldn't leave the others unprotected. Otherwise, with her psychic power, she would have charged in long ago. In short, Tatsumaki had a sharp tongue but a soft heart. Of course, her temper wasn't just an act, it was genuinely bad. Don't worry. Shinji's voice was calm. His wooden clone could also use the Rinnegan's abilities. While it couldn't freely perform every ocular jutsu, it was more than capable of blocking the spaceship's cannon fire. Then take me inside. I'll take down their leader right away. Tatsumaki spoke with complete confidence. No one else present thought there was anything wrong with her words. After all, she was the Hero Association's trump card and recognized as the most powerful Esper. P.S. The space-time Esper Blast is Murata's creation. In Once's original version, Blast's abilities were never revealed. For accuracy, Blast should follow Once's version. Shinji, however, couldn't agree. Against an opponent like Boros, someone beyond dragon level, leaving himself aside, no one in the Hero Association except Saitama would be much help. Even after becoming the Ten-Tails Jinchuriki, he wasn't completely confident. Welp, he had to abide by the brat's rule for now. Another wooden clone of Shinji appeared. One clone remained to guard the area, while the other took Tatsumaki inside the ship. Shinji placed one hand lightly on Tatsumaki's shoulder, and in the next moment, they teleported into the ship's interior. Seeing Tatsumaki vanish, Genos turned to the clone that stayed behind and asked, Master, is there anything I can do? Just protect everyone here. Shinji's answer was firm. Letting Genos face Boros would be far too dangerous. Heck, Boros could just destroy Genos' core straight. Got it. I will try my best. Although disappointed, Genos understood he was nowhere near strong enough to face a god-level threat. Meanwhile, the wooden clone had brought Tatsumaki inside the ship, where they met Shinji's true body. You're the real one this time, right? With so many clones, it's hard to tell. Tatsumaki eyed him suspiciously. Shinji didn't answer her question. He only pointed in a certain direction. They're here. The next moment, the door ahead slid open, revealing a dragon-level monster with a full green-blue body, a massive mouth lined with sharp fangs where his face should have been, and jaws on both hands and at the end of his tail. It was Garibas, one of Boros' 3 elite warriors. Ha ha ha! Found the intruders. You've got some skill to make it here, but my acidic breath will melt you to a puddle. In his mind, Garibas had already planned a full combo. First, his new acidic breath to dissolve his opponents, then double bite with the jaws on both hands, followed by Infernal Stinger, Skyrend, Spiral Tail Fong, and other deadly moves. Just thinking about it made him pity them. But before he could finish his threat, his head suddenly shifted unnaturally. As his vision dropped toward the floor, he still didn't realize what had happened. The villain's flaw is always talking too much, and Gariba's was a textbook example. He had underestimated Shinji and never noticed the space around his neck twist, ending with his head being torn off. Unlike Melzergaard, who had infinite regeneration, Gariba's strength lay in his variety of powerful attacks. But he was instantly killed by Shinji's Kamui. Alert! Host has defeated the dragon-level monster Gariba's. Reward, 90 points. He was that weak? He died in one hit? No way, that was their leader. Tatsumaki looked at the corpse on the floor with clear disdain. Not important. Shinji didn't waste time explaining. Instead, he reached out a hand to her. You're here to find their leader, right? Then follow me. Tatsumaki hesitated when she saw his hand. You're bold, I'll give you that. She teased him, but she didn't seem to resist. Just as she was about to take his hand, Shinji instead grabbed her wrist. This was his intention from the start. Holding her wrist was simply a more polite way to guide her. Still, Tatsumaki didn't look pleased, though she didn't pull away. Shinji then warped them both into the void, speeding straight toward Boros' location. Seeing that she and Shinji could pass through layer after layer of bulkheads without any obstruction, Tatsumaki's expression showed a flicker of surprise. Meanwhile, Bang and the others were still locked in a fierce battle with Melzergaard. Despite their best efforts, none of them could inflict a truly fatal injury. His body regenerated almost instantly every time. TCH, what a pain. We can't kill him completely? Metal Bat rested his bat on his shoulder, his tone filled with impatience. Bancho Tenin. At that moment, Shinji's wooden clone raised one hand and activated the Rinnegan's gravitational technique, dragging Melzergaard toward him. At the same time, Vaccine Man was pulled out of Kamui's space. Aliens? You dare invade Earth right under my watch? Unforgivable. Vaccine Man instantly transformed into his berserk form. Believing himself to be born from Earth's will, he naturally held deep hatred toward any foreign invaders who threatened the planet. The wooden clone, which could also summon Susanoo, immediately wrapped Vaccine Man in the 4th stage Susanoo armor, greatly enhancing his energy sphere attacks. Melzergaard, who had been pulled in by Bancho Tenin, was preparing to counterattack, but what greeted him instead were massive energy spheres raining down on him. In an instant, his body was blasted into chunks of flesh. Among the debris, 2 marble-sized hearts were snatched by Shinji and crushed on the spot. Gaia! 2 of Melzergaard's heads let out agonized screams before deflating like popped balloons, finally melting into puddles of blood, never to regenerate again. Those marble-sized hearts were his vital weak points, as each head corresponded to 1 heart. The problem was that these hearts were tiny and moved freely through his body, making them extremely difficult to target in normal combat. Bang and the others froze in shock when they saw the 2 heads suddenly die, but they quickly realized this must be the enemy's weakness. Sensing the danger, the remaining 3-headed Melzergaard hurriedly contacted the ship's other dragon-level warrior, Gariba's. Coincidentally, Gariba's had also been trying to reach him. Melzergaard, get back to the ship. We've got intruders on board. I can't. Aim the ship's firepower at these guys on the ground and wipe them out. What? There's someone on the surface strong enough to give you trouble? Cut the chatter. I can't hold out much longer. Hearing the urgency in his voice and the fact that he said can't hold out, Gariba's realized how serious this was. Got it. Just make sure you don't get caught in the crossfire. He gave a brief warning, then immediately ordered the lower-ranking fighters to start bombardment. Melzergaard was about to tell him to come help instead, but the line went dead. It's over. Despair set in as another volley of massive energy spheres came flying toward him. Boom! In the intense, concentrated bombardment, Melzergaard's body and hearts were completely obliterated, leaving not a trace behind. Alert! Host has defeated the dragon-level monster Melzergaard. Reward, 90 points. But before the group could celebrate their victory, the spaceship above began firing countless shells toward the surface, right at Bang and the others' location. Bang! 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 The barrage was so rapid that the sound alone made their ears ring. The shells were so fast they looked like streaks of light. If they hit the ground, bang, and the others had almost no chance of surviving. Damn! Above! At that critical moment, Shinji's figure suddenly appeared in midair. Master? Genos immediately noticed him high in the sky, with countless shells only seconds away from impact. Bang and the others also looked up in shock, having no idea what Shinji intended to do. Shinji spread both arms wide. In that instant, all other wooden clones vanished. The power from his true body was fully concentrated into this single clone. And then, he released it all. In that moment, the entire world seemed to fall silent. Shinra Tensei. Chapter 104, Terrifying Destructive Power. The moment Super Shinra Tensei was unleashed, an unimaginably powerful repulsive force burst out from Shinji's body. Centered on him, the force radiated outward in all directions without the slightest blind spot. Countless missiles were caught in the blast and hurled back toward their origin, while the range of the repulsion kept expanding. What is going on? Those missiles, they bounced back? Is this also Shinji's ability? The bizarre sight in the sky left Bang and the others momentarily stunned. At that moment, sensing that the wooden clone had already released Super Shinra Tensei, Shinji's true body created another clone. Following his instructions, the clone instantly teleported to Bang and the other side. Shinji? Weren't you up there in the sky? How are there, two of you? Bang stared at the sudden arrival, clearly surprised, but Shinji didn't have time to explain. He immediately summoned Susanoo. Since a clone's power was limited, especially with another clone still sustaining the chakra-draining Super Shinra Tensei, Shinji's true body couldn't allocate much power to this one while preparing to face Boros. As a result, Susanoo could only be summoned to its fourth stage. Everyone, get inside! Shinji called out to them. Using Susanoo, he surrounded and protected everyone, ushering them into its armored body. Boom! Boom! Missiles detonated beneath the spaceship, but the blasts barely scratched the massive craft. The ship's size, mass, and defenses were on an enormous scale, powered directly by Boros' own energy. But the missiles weren't the real problem. The real problem came a second later. Super Shinra Tensei's repulsion didn't just hit the spaceship, it also struck the ground below. The terrifying force swept the debris of the buildings directly beneath Shinji outward in all directions. While the spaceship's sheer size and mass made it nearly impossible for even Super Shinra Tensei to move it, the lower structures and low-ranking fighters in its bottom decks were not so lucky. The facilities beneath the ship were crushed to pieces, and many low-ranking fighters were turned into pulp under the collapsing compartments. Alert! Host has defeated a wolf-level monster. Reward, 6 points. Alert! Host has defeated a tiger-level monster. Reward, 14 points. In an instant, the ground within over 10 kilometers was leveled. No, more accurately, it was sunken into a basin. Aside from the Hero Association headquarters building, which still stood, there wasn't even a scrap of intact debris left. Even the underside of the spaceship was visibly dented. It wasn't enough to sink the craft entirely, but it did destroy the missile launch systems and wipe out part of the low-ranking crew stationed in its lower decks. Bang and the others were left speechless as they took in the devastation around them. Meanwhile, just moments earlier, the S-Class Hero Tank Top Master had also arrived outside the Hero Association headquarters, ready to face the formidable enemy. As he looked up at the spaceship, his gaze caught sight of Shinji in the sky. That looks like S-Class Rank 5, or was it another rank? Kamui, right? But that name. I feel like I've heard it somewhere before. Tank Top Master vaguely remembered the hero name because Shinji had once disciplined Tank Top Tiger and Tank Top Black Hole, his underlings. Still, he couldn't recall exactly where he'd heard it. Forget it. The priority right now is dealing with the enemy in front of us. He pushed the thought aside, grabbed a massive chunk of building debris with his bare hands, and with a sudden burst of power, hurled it toward the spaceship above. This was his anti-air tactic, continuously bombarding the ship with huge blocks of concrete. However, right at that moment, Shinji's Super Shinra Tensei was unleashed. The concrete chunk flying midair was instantly repelled, and Tank Top Master himself was sent tumbling away along with the debris on the ground. His face changed drastically. This is psychic power? I've lost. Fortunately, Tank Top Master's physical endurance was exceptional. Even after being hit by Shinra Tensei, he suffered no serious injuries. At that moment, the Shinji in the air slowly descended to the ground, only to dissipate shortly afterward due to exhaustion. The terrifying energy cost of a single Super Shinra Tensei was immense. If it hadn't instantly weakened Shinji's true body, that alone was already fortunate. For a wood clone, disappearing was a given. As for his true body, Shinji was perfectly fine. His physique had already reached a high level of resilience, and with Hashirama cells, he could recover his strength rapidly. Shinji, are you alright? Bang noticed the just-vanished clone and couldn't help but feel concerned. The wooden clone protecting them dispelled Susanoo. I'm fine. The one you just saw and the one before were both clones, Shinji explained simply. My true body has already entered the spaceship. Tatsumaki is in there too. Oh, going straight for the boss, huh? Bang nodded. You two have a plan. If it were this old man, I wouldn't be able to get up there at all. So, that kind of power was only from a clone? The real body must be even stronger, right? Atomic Samurai spoke in awe. Shinji gave no reply. Only a smirk. Genos scanned the surroundings, taking in the vast basin that had been carved into the earth. He then looked up at the battered underside of the spaceship. Even Master's clone had such terrifying destructive power. Genos clenched his fist. He chose the right person as his teacher. Are there still many enemies inside the ship? I want to go in and support. Metal Bat swung his bat without a hint of fear. Better leave it to Tatsumaki and Shinji for now. We don't have any means to get up there quickly, said Super Alloy Darkshine, who had just joined them. He hadn't been inside Susanoo earlier, but with a body defense second only to Saitama's, an area-wide but low single-point damage attack like Shinra Tensei posed no real threat to him. That's right, but if even Shinji and Tatsumaki can't handle it, then, Bang raised his head toward the spaceship still hovering steadily in the sky, his tone heavy. He didn't finish his sentence, not wanting to spread panic. But deep down, he knew Shinji's strength, and Tatsumaki's as well. If a foe emerged that even the two of them together couldn't stop, then Earth was truly doomed. Chapter 105, Boros. Inside the spaceship. Shinji sped forward with Tatsumaki, heading straight for the control room where Boros was waiting. Warning to intruders. Leave immediately. Otherwise, we will unleash all our firepower to destroy you. This is your final warning. Jiryugenshub's voice kept blaring at the intruders. Shinji ignored it completely. Where is that noise coming from? So annoying. Tatsumaki was already growing impatient from the constant shouting. If you two just leave now, I'll stop bothering you, Jiryugenshub quickly added. Don't wanna. But be here, I will come back for you next, Tatsumaki refused flatly. Without responding to Jiryugenshub at all, Shinji pressed forward and finally passed through the last bulkhead, entering the spaceship's control room. At that moment, Shinji released Tatsumaki's wrist and saw Boros standing ahead. The tall man, clad in armor and a cape, with long spiked pink hair and a single glaring eye, was none other than the leader of the spaceship, the Universal Conqueror, Boros. He stood beneath a massive energy core that powered the entire vessel. You managed to reach this place so quickly, welcome to my ship, Boros greeted them politely instead of attacking right away. You're their leader, right? Tatsumaki immediately demanded. I am the leader of the Dark Matter Thieves, and ruler of the entire universe, Boros, he said. Before the battle begins, tell me your names. I am Shinji, and I will be the only 6 paths of this world. Shinji introduced himself with equal respect. Wait, last line was cringe. Tatsumaki, however, had no patience for such formalities. Why waste time with this nonsense? Let's just start. She raised her hand, preparing to unleash a telekinetic blast at Boros. Hey! At that moment, a strange octopus-like monster with multiple long tentacles suddenly appeared behind her. It was Jiryugen, Boros' last surviving elite warrior, a dragon-level esper. In an instant, several stone fragments shot toward Shinji and Tatsumaki at nearly the speed of light. How dare you invade our ship? I, the universe's greatest telekinetic master, will grind you into paste, he roared. Tatsumaki instinctively threw up an energy barrier to block the stones instead of dodging. Seeing this, Shinji quickly pressed one hand onto her shoulder, pulling her into his intangibility state. Just as he suspected, the stones instantly pierced through Tatsumaki's barrier as if it were paper. She kept a calm expression, but when she tried to knock the stones away with her psychic power, she found, unexpectedly, that her telekinesis had completely failed. A flicker of alarm crossed her eyes. Those stones were about to hit her. But instead, they passed straight through her body without leaving the slightest sensation. This is... She froze for a moment before realizing Shinji's hand was still on her shoulder, so he must have done something to her. What are you doing? Even without your protection, I could have deflected those stones myself, she said in irritation. Then, in a softer voice, she muttered, but, thanks anyway. Shinji didn't pay attention to whatever Tatsumaki just said. In his mind, he admitted he might have underestimated the octopus alien's abilities a little. Jiryugen truly was the universe's greatest telekinetic master, just as Boros claiming to be the ruler of the universe wasn't exactly false. After all, neither of them had ever been to Earth before now. Jiryugen's specialty lay in telekinetic techniques. For example, he could eliminate friction between stone and air, allowing stones to accelerate to near light speed. If Tatsumaki tried throwing stones the same way, the friction and pressure would cause them to heat up and vaporize instantly. Even when she threw large objects, her speed still couldn't match Jiryugen's. However, his advantage over Tatsumaki existed only in technique, since her raw telekinetic strength was far greater. Jiryugen's overall power ranked somewhere between mid-dragon and high-dragon level, still far behind her. At this point, Shinji released his intangibility and calmly left Jiryugen to Tatsumaki. He turned to face Boros. He's yours to handle. Boros is mine. TCH. Tatsumaki was clearly displeased, since she'd rather fight the strongest enemy than the giant octopus. But she compromised for now. Fine. I'll finish him quickly. Don't hold me back, and try not to get yourself killed. Shinji only smiled faintly without replying. Guess she wasn't that unreasonable after all. So, you're the representative of this planet? Boros asked, still unhurried. He could feel a mysterious energy radiating from his opponent. Perhaps this was the powerful figure the seer had foretold. Not exactly, Shinji replied evenly. Whether you are or not, we'll find out soon enough. Boros' expression lit up with excitement. Come! Let me enjoy a thrilling battle. This is exactly why I'm here. Shinji formed a hand seal. Summoning Jutsu, Ten Tails. A colossal beast, over 1,000 meters tall, erupted into existence inside the ship, tearing the control room apart and shaking the entire vessel. Roar! The Ten Tails' roar thundered through the air. What? The sight of the gigantic creature left Jiryugen, still facing Tatsumaki, completely stunned. Tatsumaki, recognizing the familiar beast, was just as surprised. Boros looked up at the Ten Tails, sensing its near-limitless energy. His excitement grew. Now he was certain the prophecy had been real. It also means that even if the prophecy had only been a lie meant to lure him away from his homeworld, he had still been willing to spend 20 years searching for Earth. The Ten Tails immediately condensed a massive tailed beast bomb and fired it directly at Boros. Boom! Shinji moved instantly to shield Tatsumaki. Jiryugen, standing far too close, was swallowed whole by the massive explosion, like a barrage of nuclear warheads detonating beneath his feet. Many other monsters in nearby chambers were vaporized as well. Alert! Host has defeated the dragon-level monster Sharingan. Reward, 90 points. Alert! Host has defeated a wolf-level monster. Reward, 5 points. The entire spaceship rocked violently, on the verge of collapse. The tailed beast's bomb's destructive range should have been smaller than the ship's size, but the vessel's inner walls were incredibly durable, absorbing most of the blast. That was the only reason it wasn't completely destroyed and falling apart in midair. Even so, part of the energy punched straight through the top and bottom of the ship, nearly striking the people on the ground below. With the bottom blown open, the Ten-Tails plummeted through the gap. Shinji, Tatsumaki, and Boros fell to the ground alongside it. Chapter 106, Weak S-Class Heroes. When the massive tailed beast bomb struck the spaceship, the deafening blast drew the attention of the S-Class heroes below, making them all look up. What they saw next was almost unreal. The explosion from the tailed beast bomb sent a blazing column of fire tearing straight through the underside of the ship, nearly blasting down to where they stood. Even so, they could not afford to relax, because countless chunks of wreckage were falling toward the ground. From such a height, even an S-Class hero would be badly bruised if hit. Still, they were all S-Class heroes, each with their own means of protecting themselves. Watch out above! Bang had already taken his water stream rock smashing fist stance, calling out a warning to the others. Atomic Samurai kept one hand on the hilt of his sheathed sword, ready to cut down any debris falling from the ship. Genos also raised his arm, aiming upward. Wait! Is that? At that moment, they all noticed a massive figure plummeting from the sky. It was the Ten-Tails, falling from the ship. Its enormous size made them instinctively uneasy. Bam! With a heavy thud, the Ten-Tails slammed into the ground, gouging out a huge crater. It ignored the heroes entirely, instead lifting its head to glare at Boros above. Bang and the others, however, had their attention completely drawn to it. So that's the leader of these aliens? Its size is terrifying, just like that ship, Child Emperor said in awe. Did Tatsumaki and Shinji knock it down here? Perfect. We can take it out while it's down, Metal Bat said with confidence. This looks like an incredibly strong enemy. Let's move in together, Bang said in a low voice. Humph. Genos aimed his arm cannon directly at the Ten-Tails. While thinking of the monster as an enemy, none of them realized that when the Ten-Tails fell, it had deliberately avoided landing on them. Only Shinji's wooden clone still kept its eyes on the sky. Through his Rinnegan, he could clearly see his true body, Tatsumaki, and Boros slowly descending. Along with the corpses of low-ranking fighters, there was also a bald man. Saitama had also fallen through the massive hole in the spaceship. He had been inside, searching for the leader of the invaders. The ship was so enormous that he had nearly gotten lost. In the original story, he had even tricked Sharingan into guiding him to the control room. But before he could find his way, the ship suddenly exploded, almost blasting his clothes apart, and he ended up falling from above. Huh? What happened? Why did it suddenly blow up? Saitama still hadn't figured out the situation. Then he spotted Shinji and the others also falling nearby. Shinji? So you guys came inside the ship too? By the way, what happened? Saitama asked with his usual clueless expression. That guy down there is my friend. He's the one who blew up the ship, Shinji explained, even while facing Boros. He made sure to emphasize the word friend because he didn't want Saitama to casually punch the Ten-Tails to death. Although the Ten-Tails could regenerate one or a few punches, if Saitama were to get serious, Ten-Tails would cease to exist. Oh, I see. Saitama glanced down, spotting the massive creature. Wow, that's amazing. It actually managed to blow up a ship that big. Wait, friend? Held by the wrist, Tatsumaki reacted sharply to the word friend. The big guy Shinji had just called his friend was actually the same monster Tatsumaki had fought earlier. And now she found out it was really Shinji's friend? Although Tatsumaki had suspected something like this, hearing it confirmed from Shinji still made her react. Shinji, however, had no time to deal with her. His gaze returned to Boros. The armor on Boros' body had visible cracks, most likely from that massive tailed beast's bomb. After the Ten Tails landed, Shinji, Tatsumaki, Saitama, and Boros also descended to the ground one after another. Aside from the cracks in his armor, Boros seemed completely uninjured. Even that tailed beast's bomb hadn't fully neutralized the power-suppressing effect of his armor. After all, the only one capable of shattering Boros' armor with a single punch was Saitama. Shinji? And who is that guy? Bang's eyes fell on Boros. Something about Boros gave him an unfathomable feeling. Boros still didn't attack immediately, merely glancing over the humans on the ground. They seemed to be strong fighters for this planet, but he could tell at a glance they were relatively weak and would never satisfy him. So his attention went back to Shinji. In doing so, Boros completely overlooked the bald man who looked utterly ordinary. Saitama stepped over to Shinji's wooden clone and quietly asked, "That alien with the weird hairstyle, he's the leader of the invaders, right?" "Yes." "Really? Well, since you're already fighting him, I won't even though I kinda wanna fight him." Saitama sat down beside the clone, planning to watch. Have some popcorn? If Shinji truly couldn't beat the alien, then Saitama would step in. And if that happened, he figured such an opponent might actually give him a good fight. "I have sunflower seeds. Want some?" Shinji's wooden clone pulled a bag of sunflower seeds from his Kamui space. "Thanks." Saitama happily took them, ready to snack while spectating. "That alien's an enemy too, right?" "Let's take him down first, then deal with that big one," Metal Bat said, charging toward Boros with his bat. "Don't underestimate him," Bang warned sharply. "Silver Fong, you're being overly cautious." "What, did you get timid with age?" "That alien looks weaker than the five-headed one we fought earlier," Atomic Samurai teased. But before he could finish, there was a dull impact. He turned his head to see Metal Bat flying straight back toward them. Only Bang's water stream rock-smashing fist stopped him from being sent who knows how far. Atomic Samurai's expression instantly turned serious, and he didn't dare joke anymore. Next, Pori Prisoner tried a sneak attack from behind, but Boros didn't even turn. With one hand, he grabbed Pori Prisoner's head and slammed him down. With a heavy thud, the hero's upper body was driven into the ground like a planted seedling, his legs twitching twice before going limp. With a sharp crack, Boros shattered the rest of his power-suppressing armor, and his aura began to surge wildly. "My patience is limited. If anyone else interferes with this battle, I will show no mercy." Chapter 107, Power Release State. As Boros' aura continued to climb, his body began to change. Veins across his body lit up with a blue glow, his hair stood on end like a super silence, and with his armor gone, a large blue eye could be seen in the center of his chest. When his aura reached its peak, an overwhelming force erupted from him, surging toward the sky like a storm. Everyone there was overwhelmed by the intense pressure Boros radiated. Everyone except Saitama, who sat calmly, eating sunflower seeds. Shinji's wooden clone sat next to him, doing the same. Shinji had deliberately kept this wooden clone's power active so it could protect the other S-class heroes if needed. The clone's strength was limited, but with Kamui's abilities like intangibility, it could still handle emergencies with ease. "I'm afraid, this guy is the real deal," Bang said, his face grave. "We can get attacked from both sides, huh? This could get tricky." Atomic Samurai was still thinking of the Ten Tails as an enemy. Ten Tails' sheer size alone made it a menace, and the aura Boros was giving off looked even more dangerous. "Tatsumaki is our biggest hope. We'll assist her," Child Emperor said, already realizing Boros was no ordinary foe. "I'm here." At that moment, Tank Top Master, who had been sent flying earlier by the Super Shinra Tensei, came running back to join the fight. Though Shinji's earlier attack had made him understand the overwhelming power of psychic abilities, he hadn't been discouraged. As an S-class hero whose strength relied on physical power, his mindset and willpower were the exact opposite of superalloy Darkshine's. Tank Top Master, you're here too. That guy over there seems especially strong. Let's support little Tatsumaki in attacking him, Superalloy Darkshine said. Got it. Tank Top Master nodded, surprised that so many S-class heroes were needed just to deal with this one opponent. Not everyone's here, but this should be enough. Genos aimed his arm cannon separately at both the Tintails and Boros. He wondered which one was the god-level threat his teacher had spoken of, or if that term referred to both of them together. It was like how the whole incident involving the sea folk was classified as a demon-level disaster. The term disaster often referred to the overall event, not a single target. So if enough demon-level monsters appeared together to cause chaos, it could be considered a dragon-level disaster. Probably. Either way, we'll have to fight, Child Emperor said, though his instincts told him the outcome was far from certain. Several S-class heroes were still absent. Aside from Blast and Metal Knight, who were already missing, Drive Knight, King, Watchdog Man, Flashy Flash, Pig God, and Zombie Man had all left as well. Even with more than 10 S-class heroes still present, the oppressive aura Boros gave off was enough to make the Child Emperor uneasy. Don't slow me down. Tatsumaki clearly had no intention of coordinating with the others. She immediately launched a psychic attack at Boros, who had just finished gathering energy. A swirling air current surged toward him like a cannonball. But Boros easily dodged it and, moving at a speed nearly impossible to see with the naked eye, charged straight at her in a direct, brutal melee assault. Tatsumaki's body was surrounded by a protective energy barrier, yet in the blink of an eye Boros was right in front of her. Aura, 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 aura. Boros' fists blurred into afterimages as he hammered relentlessly at Tatsumaki's barrier. Cracks began spreading rapidly across the energy shield, each punch deepening the fractures. Tatsumaki's expression grew serious. She shot into the air to evade Boros' strikes, summoning multiple tornadoes that swept up chunks of rubble from the ground and hurled them toward him. Boros ignored the cyclones entirely. His legs tensed, and then... boom! The ground cratered under the force of his leap, propelling him toward Tatsumaki in the sky. Bang and the others had originally intended to support her, but with the fight now taking place high above, there was little they could do. Even those with ranged attacks couldn't land a clean hit. The speed of both fighters made aiming nearly impossible, and a misfire could easily hit Tatsumaki instead. All they could do was watch from the ground. Boros' speed was so great that Tatsumaki struggled to react. A devastating uppercut shattered her barrier completely. She quickly formed another, but Boros' fist was already in front of her, and then, nothing. His punch didn't connect. Surprised, Boros realized that Tatsumaki had vanished. His combat instincts kicked in instantly. Ignoring his eyes, he locked onto her presence, turning his head, only to see her on the ground, cradled in Shinji's arms, and a princess carry, again. Stop overexerting yourself. You haven't recovered your strength yet. That enemy is a cosmic fighter, Shinji said to the princess. Before Boros had arrived, Tatsumaki's fight with the Tintails had already drained her. Only a few hours had passed since then, hardly enough time for her to recover much of her power. In this state, she stood no chance against Boros in his released form. Even at full power, it was uncertain whether she could defeat him in this state. At best, she might be able to break his armor when he was still in his suppressed form. As for his final meteor burst form, apart from Saitama, no S-class hero would survive for more than a moment. In his released form alone, Tatsumaki was the only one who could barely match him. Put me down! Since she was conscious this time, Tatsumaki resisted more strongly. Shinji simply let go without warning. The sudden drop nearly made her fall, but she managed to float with telekinesis before hitting the ground. I really am out of stamina, but that guy isn't ordinary. You'll die. She looked up at Boros, still in the sky, her tone grim. It was the first time she had faced an enemy like him, a domineering power that could even suppress her psychic abilities. "Then pray for me," Shinji replied calmly, smiling. "Die, you idiot! Who cares about you?" She turned away with a huff, hands on her hips. Shinji didn't mind. In the next moment, his figure vanished. "Wait!" She had meant to warn him about something, but by the time she tried to call out, he was already gone. Chapter 108, Sage Arts would release true several thousand hands. "Damn it! We're practically useless here," Atomic Samurai muttered when he saw that even Tatsumaki had nearly been in danger and was saved only because of Shinji. "We should hold back for now and help only when the time is right. Forcing ourselves in when we can't make a difference will only backfire," Bang said gravely. "So, we should just stand." "Stand and watch, yes." Bang said, "Lately, it seems like we're doing this a lot. Even Tatsumaki can't handle this kind of enemy? Could Madame Shibaba's prophecy actually come true?" Child Emperor looked up at Boros, his expression heavy. It wasn't just Shibaba's prophecy he remembered. Sitch had also mentioned Shinji's prediction about a god-level threat. While Child Emperor didn't believe this alien could be so strong that it would lead to humanity's extinction, after all, he had yet to witness Boros' full power, it was undeniable that the S-class heroes present were already at a loss. Whether Shinji could stand against him was uncertain, and Child Emperor did not hold much hope. To almost everyone, Tatsumaki was the Hero Association's trump card. If even she had fallen, then what could the S-class rank 5 hero, Kamui, possibly do? The only other hope was the enigmatic man known as the strongest on the surface, King, but his true abilities were shrouded in mystery. No one had ever seen him fight, and at this moment, he was nowhere to be found, so he was not an option either. "That guy can fly into the sky, so there's nothing I can do," Metal Bat said gloomily, resting his bat on his shoulder. His ability was to grow stronger each time he was injured, his body's capabilities surging higher and higher. But Boros hadn't given him that chance. One hit sent him flying, and then Boros simply stayed airborne. "Let's just watch for now. Maybe Mr. Kamui will come up with something," Super Alloy Darkshine said, trying to encourage the others. He quickly ran over to the spot where Boros had earlier slammed Puri Puri Prisoner into the ground and pulled him out like a radish. Boros' overwhelming presence had been so consuming that they had almost forgotten about Puri Puri Prisoner entirely. Fortunately, this world seemed to have a heroes don't die law, he was only unconscious, not in any real danger. "Master," Genos couldn't help but feel worried. If even his teacher couldn't handle such a powerful foe, then perhaps Earth really was doomed. On Saitama's side, however, it was a completely different scene. He and Shinji's wooden clone were still sitting leisurely, cracking sunflower seeds, as if what was happening before them was nothing more than some trivial squabble. Finally, no more annoying distractions. Boros' excitement grew as his gaze fixed on Shinji. Those other people earlier had merely served as his warm-up. The moment he finished speaking, Boros lunged at Shinji, moving so fast that he vanished from sight. But Shinji's eyes were far from ordinary. In the Renegade's perception, Boros' movements were perfectly traceable. Shinji immediately activated holification, causing Boros' rapid barrage of punches to pass straight through him without hitting anything. "Alert! Host has redeemed 3 Tomo Sharingan times 1, cost, 200 points. Remaining points, 1,500. Alert! Host has redeemed Physique times 700, cost, 700 points. Remaining points, 800. Alert! Host has redeemed Hashirama Cells times 80, cost, 800 points. Remaining points, 0. Physique plus 700. Hashirama Cells plus 80. Physique, 2,608. Hashirama Cells, 200. While this world seemed to have a heroes don't die rule, Shinji was not about to gamble with his life. He redeemed a 3 Tomo Sharingan as insurance. If something went wrong, he could use his Anaji to rewrite his own death. Alert! Host's Hashirama cells have reached 150. Reward unlocked, Sage Art would release, true several thousand hands, 1,000-arm cannon. Alert! Host's Hashirama cells have reached 200. Reward unlocked, top transformed Buddha. As the number of Hashirama cells increased, Shinji unlocked the ultimate would release technique. By now, it was impossible to count how many punches Boros had thrown at Shinji. Not a single one had landed. Every blow passed straight through Shinji's body. What? Boros, puzzled, halted his attacks. Limbo, border jail. Seizing the moment, Shinji activated the Rinnegan's technique, summoning 4 invisible shadows that could neither be seen nor touched. These shadows looked exactly like Shinji and could use ninjutsu as well. Only those with the Rinnegan could see them, so Boros, of course, could not. The 4 shadows attacked Boros simultaneously, landing invisible blows on him. Every part of his body was struck at once, yet he saw no sign of his opponent moving. What he felt was the assault of 4 attackers at the same time. For Boros, such strikes only caused superficial injuries that his regeneration healed in moments, but the unseen assault only made him more excited about the fight. This isn't enough. Use every technique you've got. Boros shouted at Shinji while trading blows with the 4 shadows based on pure instincts. Meanwhile, on the ground, the Ten Tails was charging up an enormous tailed beast ball aimed at Boros above. Even if it missed Boros, it would still cause massive damage to the spaceship. Bang and the others, seeing this, assumed the Ten Tails intended to help Boros attack Shinji. Stop it! We can't let it interfere with Shinji. Bang quickly warned. Just as everyone was preparing to stop the Ten Tails, Tatsumaki spoke up. Are you all stupid? That thing was summoned by Shinji. If you can't even see that, you might as well go back to C-class and start over. Hearing this, only then did they realize the Ten Tails was an ally. What did you just say? Don't think I won't hit you just because you're a little girl. Metal Bat, already short-tempered, was immediately provoked by Tatsumaki's words. With that pathetic bat of yours, what do you think you can do? Tatsumaki replied flatly. You! Metal Bat was about to start a fight with her, but the wood clone of Shinji sitting beside Saitama interrupted. Enough. This isn't the time for infighting. Ten Tails, hold off on using the tailed beast ball. You'll have your moment soon enough. Metal Bat, though still annoyed with Tatsumaki, understood now wasn't the time to brawl with allies, so he reluctantly calmed down. Tatsumaki ignored him, her eyes fixed intently on Shinji in the sky. At that moment, Shinji and the 4 shadows, each wielding a Rasengan, struck Boros together, sending him crashing down. Boom! Boros slammed into the ground. Shinji immediately brought his hands together, entering Sage mode in an instant while also unleashing a Sage technique. Sage Arts with Style, True Thousand Hands. Chapter 109, 6 Paths 10 Tails Coffin Seal. As Shinji pressed his palms together to form a seal, a colossal 1,000-armed Buddha, matching the 10 Tails in size, rose from the ground out of thin air. It stood a full kilometer tall, the same as the 10 Tails, making Boros and the surrounding S-class heroes look almost like ants in comparison. Seated atop the Buddha's head was a wooden figure wrapped in a coiling wooden dragon, and Shinji stood on the figure's nose bridge. Everyone nearby stared in shock at the towering 1,000-armed Buddha. That Kamui fella, what kind of ability is this? The toothpick samurai had in his mouth nearly dropped to the ground. He caught it with his hand and popped it back in. Can he really summon creatures of this size over and over? And there's still that big guy over there on standby. Child Emperor glanced from the 1,000-armed Buddha to the similarly massive 10 Tails, unable to hide his curiosity about just how powerful the S-class rank 5 hero, Kamui, really was. Looks like in terms of size and strength, he's already suppressing that alien, right? Tank Top Master spoke in awe. Not necessarily. I suspect the enemy hasn't gone all out yet. Bang's decades of martial arts experience told him the opponent was far from showing their full strength. According to Master's description, this Boros alien should be the said god-level disaster. It's too early to celebrate. Genos's expression was equally grim. Inside, he couldn't help feeling frustrated. Faced with an enemy of this level, he was powerless, forced to stand on the sidelines and watch. He didn't even have the right to step in and would only drag his teacher down if he tried. His fists clenched tightly. The desire to become stronger burned in him more than ever. Tatsumaki looked at the thousand-armed Buddha and thought about how much Shinji had been hiding. And that other thing, the 10 tails, was it? He called it a friend, but it was obviously a summoned creature. Yeah, she wasn't blind. She had seen Shinji summon the 10 tails with her own eyes. It bothered her and irritated her at the same time. She had thought she'd finally found a worthy opponent who could push her to her limits, only to realize it was just one of Shinji's summons. The thought made her glare at Shinji standing atop the thousand-armed Buddha with her trademark dead fish eyes. If he didn't give her an explanation, she wouldn't let it go. And if he died at the hands of that alien, she'd be even less forgiving. It's huge, and it's bald too. Only Saitama was casually chatting with the wooden figure beside him. Heh. While everyone else was focused on the fight, his attention was on the fact that the giant Buddha Shinji had summoned was bald. Well, it's a Buddha statue. The monks at Shaolin Temple are bald too, aren't they? The wood clone replied. Oh! Looks like that alien's getting fired up. You'd better watch out. Saitama suddenly called out a warning to Shinji. That's how it should be. Let's enjoy a proper fight. Boros shouted excitedly before instantly teleporting right in front of Shinji and throwing a punch. Top transforms into Buddha. At the same moment Boros attacked, the 1,000 fists of the colossal Buddha clenched and swung from all directions toward him. Boom! 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 Boros's body was relentlessly battered by the Buddha's fists. Even with his incredible durability, the constant, concentrated strikes began to inflict visible damage. Only after Boros was smashed from the air into the ground did the thousand-armed Buddha's fists finally stop. Did we win? With the air filled with dust and smoke, Atomic Samurai asked the question on everyone's mind. No. There's still a life signature. Sensing that Boros's vital signs were still steady, without any sign of weakening, Genos's face darkened. In his eyes, this attack from Master was without question powerful enough to destroy the world, yet it still hadn't taken down the enemy. So this was the true terror of a god-level disaster. It still couldn't take him down? That thing looks huge. I thought it'd have some crazy strength. Is it just all show and no substance? Metal Bat said in surprise. You, shut up. Tatsumaki seemed displeased with his words. You people don't even have the right to join the fight over there. Just watch quietly. What did you say? Metal Bat's temper flared instantly. Calm down, calm down. If you push her too far, Little Tornado might actually kill you, Superalloy Darkshine quickly tried to mediate. You're just like us, stuck here watching, aren't you? But his attempt to calm things down didn't work on Metal Bat, who shot back at Tatsumaki. That's because I already used up too much strength before this fight even started. If it weren't for Shinji, you'd all be dead by now, and you're still doubting his power? Tatsumaki's gaze turned cold as she spoke. Fine. Metal Bat scratched his head in frustration. Alright, I get it. I'll sit and watch, okay? He sat cross-legged, setting his bat beside him. Even though he still felt a little unwilling, what really made him settle down was Tatsumaki mentioning Shinji's name. Just then, Boros slowly walked out from the smoke and dust. My race survived on a planet with a harsh environment, where only the strong live. We evolved one of the greatest natural regeneration abilities in the entire universe, and among my people, my body's functions, regeneration, and latent power are unmatched. In an instant, his wounded body healed completely, and he began speaking with a relaxed, confident air. Even wounds that would be fatal to you can heal in seconds for me. If I focus my power, my regeneration can spike to an explosive level. Boros then smirked. In contrast, your wounds can only pile up, and your stamina keeps wearing down. The corner of Boros' mouth curled upward. It's about time to end this fight. I'll release the massive energy within me. For most beings, even touching it would turn them into dust in an instant. His body began to charge up, blue energy flowing visibly across his form, converging on the eye in his chest, growing more and more violent. Being able to fight me, the great Boros, for this long is already impressive. I just hope you don't die too fast, Shinji. As soon as he finished, a terrifying blast cannon, no, an energy cannon, shot straight toward Shinji standing atop the giant Buddha. Boom! With a deafening flash that pierced the sky, the thousand-armed Buddha was obliterated into rubble in an instant. Chunks of debris crashed to the ground, the sound making Tatsumaki and the others' hearts jolt. Tatsumaki's eyes trembled, her face stiff. For a moment, she thought Shinji had been blown to pieces along with the Buddha. Boros stood still, ignoring all the other S-class heroes, focused only on whether Shinji had survived. If Shinji had died from that blast, Boros would have been disappointed and lost all interest in continuing the fight. But the next moment, Shinji walked out from the Buddha's remains, completely unscathed. Seeing him alive and well, Boros' eyes widened, but instead of shock, his face lit up with joy. Excellent! Now you have my recognition. Boros roared with excitement. You're the first, and the only opponent I, Boros, the ruler of the universe, have ever acknowledged. Neat! Shinji walked toward Boros step by step, forming hand seals. Boros, show me your full strength. I'm going all out too. It was the hand seal for the 6 paths, Ten-Tail's coffin seal. Hearing this, Boros froze for a moment. His large eyes showed deep confusion. The others were still stunned that Shinji was unharmed, and now, hearing him say going all out made their minds go blank. So this, still wasn't his full power. Chapter 110, Ten-Tail's Jinchuriki. The reason Shinji did not immediately absorb the Ten-Tails to become its Jinchuriki was because he wanted to face Boros in his meteor burst form as the Ten-Tails Jinchuriki himself. As Shinji slowly stepped toward Boros, the hand seals for the 6 paths Ten-Tail's coffin seal were already complete. The Ten-Tail's massive body was instantly compressed, its form flowing like liquid toward Shinji's back. Bang and the others stared in shock, completely unaware of what was happening. When the entire Ten-Tails finally entered Shinji's body, his hair began to turn white from root to tip, as if he were transcending into divinity. A white 6-path style cloak appeared on him, 9 truth-seeking orbs floated behind his back in a ring, and a 6-path staff manifested in his left hand. Alert! Host has become the Ten-Tails Jinchuriki, reward, 500 points. Alert! If the host can awaken the Rinne Sharingan, he will possess most of Kagaya Otsutsuki's power. So this is the power of the 6 paths. Shinji could feel the immense energy coursing through him. However, what concerned him was whether becoming the Ten-Tails Jinchuriki would cause his intangibility to stop working. For example, Ten-Tails Jinchuriki Obito could no longer use intangibility because the transformation covered his body with a protective shell, which nullified his own ability. But Shinji suspected it was really because Kishimoto didn't want Obito to be too overpowered. Otherwise, with both Ten-Tails' power and intangibility, how could the protagonist group even fight back? Forget Ten-Tails plus intangibility, they didn't even let Obito have dual Kamui. He only got to try it once when he was about to die, and then immediately passed on a 1-minute trial version to Kakashi. Alert! The host can still use intangibility. The reason Ten-Tails Jinchuriki Obito could not is because the Ten-Tails body, that shell, was immune to all ninjutsu except senjutsu, including Obito's own intangibility. But since the host's world has no ninjutsu, that immunity is unnecessary and has been replaced with an even stronger physique, regeneration, and vitality. Hearing the system's explanation, Shinji was finally at ease. Being able to keep intangibility was best, otherwise, he would lose one of his most important survival abilities. Good! Sensing the unfathomable energy within Shinji, Boros was exhilarated. As you wish. I will also give it my all. Buzzing sounds filled the air as Boros took a stance to gather energy, releasing an overwhelming aura. Meteor burst form. In this state, Boros' entire body turned white except for his veins. By using his internal energy as propulsion, he gained explosive power and speed far beyond biological limits, but at the cost of steadily consuming his own life force. The next moment, Boros charged at Shinji with such speed that even the Rinnegan struggled to track him. Nonetheless, Shinji managed to activate intangibility in time, allowing Boros' punch to pass harmlessly through his head. Even without hitting its target, the force of Boros' punch was devastating, shaking the terrain for several kilometers ahead. Meanwhile, Shinji's wooden clone, who had been calmly eating melon seeds, immediately activated the fourth stage of Susanoo to block the shockwave for everyone. Even then, he felt the fourth stage wasn't entirely safe, so he forcibly pushed it into the full form, complete version. Yet even so, crack! The Susanoo shattered instantly under the impact of the shockwave, though it still managed to block most of the force. After all, this wooden clone had been summoned by Shinji before he became the Jinchuriki of the Ten Tails. If it had been summoned after his transformation, the outcome would have been very different. Tatsumaki reacted immediately, casting an energy barrier over herself and everyone present, including Shinji's wooden clone. Without it, the remaining shockwave power would have been enough to destroy the clone. Even so, the leftover force still caused a faint crack to form in the barrier. Everyone felt a chill. The shockwave from a single punch was already this terrifying. Tatsumaki's expression grew tense. The alien who called himself the ruler of the universe was overwhelmingly strong. However, under the effect of intangibility, Shinji remained completely unharmed. He quickly formed seals again, releasing a portion of the Ten Tails' power within him to make it grow into the God Tree. He did this because of the system's earlier reminder: if he could awaken the Rinne Sharingan, he would gain most of Kagaya Otsutsuki's power, and to awaken it, a God Tree was essential. "I've found your weakness." Taking advantage of Shinji forming seals, Boros drove a full-powered knee strike straight into Shinji's abdomen. A seasoned warrior like him naturally possessed keen sensing abilities. While double Kamui was deadly as a surprise attack, after missing several times, Boros had begun to see through its secret. Whenever he couldn't hit his opponent, he also couldn't detect any signs of life from them, as if they had become a ghost. But just now, while Shinji was forming seals, Boros sensed his life signature again and immediately launched his strongest attack without hesitation. He was, after all, the ruler of the universe. After just a few exchanges, he had discovered the flaw in intangibility and decisively launched an all-out strike. This lunar kick sent Shinji flying toward the moon at the speed of light. This was not supersonic or near supersonic speed. It was true light speed. However, Shinji's body never actually crashed into the moon, because it had already vaporized midair from the friction between light-speed movement and the atmosphere. But whether that was truly Shinji's real body was still in question. Huff, huff. Boros' breathing had grown heavy. His meteor burst form placed an enormous burden on his body, which was why he rarely used it unless absolutely necessary. "Is this battle finally over?" Panting, Boros muttered, "To fight me to this extent, you are already strong enough, but it's a pity you still." He believed Shinji had been completely obliterated by that full-powered strike. He had felt his attack connect with the body, and no one could survive a hit like that. But before he could finish speaking, the sound of the God Tree, grown from the Ten Tails, drew his attention. Instinctively, Boros turned to look at the God Tree, seemingly unaware of a truth-seeking orb flying straight toward him. Chapter 111, Fusion of Attacks. Facts prove that Boros possessed both exceptional reaction speed and sensory perception. Even with his gaze locked on the divine tree behind him, he immediately sensed the incoming threat. In an instant, he raised his arm to intercept the truth-seeking orb speeding toward him. To his surprise, the small black sphere ignored his defense entirely. The moment it touched his arm, the entire limb shattered. "What is this?" Boros muttered, startled yet maintaining a composed expression. He allowed the sphere to tear through his arm and pierce his torso, confident his regeneration would handle the damage. True to his belief, the destroyed parts of his body reformed in the very next second. Right away, he detected Shinji's life force again. Whipping around toward the source, he was shocked to see Shinji completely unharmed. His eyes widened with disbelief. Not only had the man survived, but he looked utterly untouched. The truth was, the Shinji he had struck earlier with his moon kick had been nothing more than a wood clone. Shinji had invested little chakra into it, and at the speed of light, the clone had already disintegrated midair from friction with the atmosphere. The fact that it had not burst into a spray of blood the instant Boros made contact was already remarkable. Sage Art, Storm Release, Light Fong. A brilliant purple beam erupted from Shinji's mouth, moving at light speed. This jutsu could slice through anything, and Boros was cut cleanly in half at the waist. Before the two halves could even fully separate, his body had regenerated again. Shinji! Boros bellowed the name and surged forward at full speed. Sage Art, Release, Lightning Dispatch. In a blink, Shinji's body teleported into the sky. From his hands burst two jagged, tree branch-shaped bolts of black-violet lightning, striking the charging Boros. Yuhu! Boros pushed through the searing damage, his body tearing apart and reforming repeatedly as he rocketed upward without losing momentum. In the next instant, he swung a colossal hook toward Shinji midair. This time, Shinji did not evade with intangibility. Instead, one of his truth-seeking orbs shifted into the shape of the sword of Nunaboko, which he brought up to meet the blow. Constantly relying on intangibility felt dull to him. He wanted to see if Boros' meteor burst strength could be countered head-on. The sword of Nunaboko was said to be the creation blade of the Sage of Six Paths, as its strength was tied directly to the wielder's will. The more unshakable the resolve, the greater its destructive and defensive power. If someone like Obito, whose conviction never wavered, had wielded it during the Fourth Shinobi War, the course of the battle might have changed entirely. But that was another matter. Shinji's will might not be legendary, yet it was unwavering. His determination now was simple, to defeat Boros with everything at his disposal. Crack! The sword of Nunaboko caught Boros' fist, but a thin fracture ran along its length. Boros unleashed a relentless barrage, and after countless impacts, the blade finally shattered. His next punch shot toward Shinji's face. Susanoo! In an instant, Shinji's complete body Susanoo materialized, intercepting the blow and forcing Boros backward with its colossal frame. It was clear that Shinji's complete body Susanoo had grown to nearly double its previous size, now reaching proportions close to Hagoromo Otsutsuki's. It stood on par with the 10 Tails and the 1,000-armed Buddha, each on the kilometer scale. And even this was not the ultimate limit of Susanoo. Sage Art would release, true several thousand hands. As the 1,000-armed Buddha manifested, Shinji released the majority of the 10 Tails' power. In that moment, he merged the 10 Tails, the 1,000-armed Buddha, and his complete body Susanoo into one overwhelming form. What emerged was the most extreme Susanoo he could conceive. The 10 Tails, already possessing its 10 tails, now bore thousands of gargantuan arms. Its body, the very embodiment of the divine tree, was encased first in a layer of wooden armor. Over this rested a second layer of azure Tengu armor. Massive wings stretched wide, blotting out the sky and granting it the ability to soar. At the center of its brow stood Shinji. I will defeat you, no matter the cost. Boros kicked off the air itself, hurling his momentum back toward Shinji. In an instant, he unleashed another flying kick at full force. Although Boros possessed nearly limitless energy, his meteor burst form consumed it at a terrifying rate. Even with his reserves, he could not sustain it for long. He had already resolved to burn everything he had in order to bring Shinji down. The fused form of Susanoo, 10 Tails, and 1,000-armed Buddha had only just stabilized when Boros' kick, no weaker than his moon kick, slammed into it. The gigantic Susanoo trembled under the monstrous strike, driven back step after thunderous step. Below, the S-class heroes stood frozen in awe. To them, this was nothing less than a clash of gods, while they themselves were mere mortals, powerless to intervene. This scale is far beyond a dragon-level disaster. This has to be God-level, Child Emperor muttered in disbelief. At this intensity, with neither side gaining the upper hand, if it were us against that alien, we would have been wiped out instantly, Bang said gravely. Yeah, as much as I hate to admit it, I doubt I could take even one of his punches, Atomic Samurai added with a strained smile. Even Superalloy Darkshine, who prided himself on his invincible physique, began to falter in his confidence. Just watching Shinji and Boros fight filled him with a crushing sense of inadequacy. He could not help but wonder if his body could withstand even a single punch from Boros. The thought alone shattered his composure. He sank to the ground, curling in on himself, unable to watch any longer. Master, are we truly powerless here? Genos asked quietly from beside Shinji's wood clone. The clone only shook its head slightly, unable to give an answer. Thud! After being forced back to the base of the divine tree, the colossal Susanoo slammed its rear foot into the earth, finally halting its retreat. In that instant, the 10 tails moved like mighty arms, each gripping one of Shinji's weapons, along with others formed from truth-seeking orbs. The thousands of enormous hands covering its body also readied themselves to strike. The arsenal was vast: the sword of Nunaboko, colossal shuriken, kilometer-long greatswords, massive blades, and countless other weapons of war. On every one of them, Shinji poured the power of Kamui. Chapter 112, The Power of Kagaya Otsutsuki. Kamui Shuriken. Kamui Sword of Nunaboko. Shinji unleashed every weapon at his disposal in a single, relentless assault against Boros. For Shuriken charged with Kamui's power sliced through Boros' body, tearing it into countless fragments. Yet in the next instant, Boros drew in energy and restored himself completely, as if nothing had happened. The Sword of Nunaboko, a blade forged from divine DNA, followed next, accompanied by the endless barrage from the enormous hands sprouting from the 10 tails back. Within mere breaths, Boros' body was destroyed again and again, only for him to regenerate each time without pause. It was as if he possessed an undying body, one that could never truly be slain. Still, Shinji knew this was not true immortality. Boros' energy was vast but not infinite. Once depleted, his regeneration would fail. That point, however, was still far off. This is the kind of opponent worthy of being defeated by me, Boros bellowed, even as his body was torn apart repeatedly. With unmatched ferocity, he charged forward, matching the Susanoo's mighty strikes with a whirlwind of devastating punches. While Boros could recover almost endlessly, the Susanoo lacked any means of healing. In a prolonged head-on clash, the colossal armor began to lose ground. Each full-powered blow from Boros left damage that could not be undone. The first casualty was the Tengu armor, shattered open to reveal a gaping wound. Soon after, the 1,000-armed Buddha shell protecting the 10 tails began to crack, the fractures spreading quickly. This was already the most formidable Susanoo Shinji could summon, yet Boros' strength still forced it backward. The towering figure, over a kilometer high, staggered under the overwhelming force of Boros' meteor burst power, retreating step by step. Just before it could crash into the divine tree, Shinji maneuvered it aside. But that movement left him dangerously exposed. Got you! With sharp, veteran instincts, Boros seized the opportunity. He launched his most explosive punch yet, a strike that blasted through the Susanoo's torso. The shockwave erupted from its back, rippling across thousands of meters. Because of the Susanoo's immense size, the force dispersed at an altitude of hundreds to thousands of meters, stretching across several thousand to nearly 10,000 meters in length. The ground below remained untouched, sparing those who stood there. Shinji, anticipating the impact, activated intangibility at the very last moment. Without it, his body would never have withstood Boros' full-force strike. Boros panted heavily, his chest rising and falling. Ha, ha, ha. The extended barrage, capped by that final devastating blow, had drained a significant portion of his strength. In his mind, the battle was already decided. But then, the Susanoo faded away. Standing before him, completely unscathed, was Shinji. What? Boros stared in disbelief, struggling to accept what his eyes told him. He did not rush forward recklessly this time. Instead, he studied his opponent, searching for a way to break that elusive power. The ability to nullify his every attack was far more dangerous than his own regeneration. If he could not find a way around it, all his strength and energy would be wasted. It was then that his gaze shifted toward the towering tree that pierced the clouds above. From the moment the divine tree appeared, he had been intrigued by its presence. He remembered how Shinji had deliberately avoided making contact with it earlier, which hinted at the possibility of a hidden weakness. Determined to test his theory, Boros suddenly charged toward the divine tree. With a single sweeping strike, he split it cleanly in two. As the massive form began to topple, Shinji heard a voice in his mind. "Absorb me. Absorb the Ten Tails, absorb the divine tree, absorb everything." There was no doubt it was the voice of the divine tree itself. Without hesitation, Shinji flew toward it just as he had done when absorbing the Ten Tails, drawing its entire form into his body. Realizing something was wrong, Boros reacted instantly. He rushed forward to interrupt the process before it could be completed. Limbo, border jail. Four shadowy figures appeared at once, intercepting his path. Boros barely slowed. He ignored their strikes, refusing to heal his wounds, and pushed forward, dragging his battered body to deliver a flying kick aimed directly at Shinji. Yet his leg passed straight through Shinji's body as if it were an illusion. At that same moment, Shinji completed the absorption of the divine tree. Raising a hand, he removed something from his forehead. A blood-red eye pattern with 9 tomo opened in its place, the Rinne Sharingan. Alert! Host has awakened the Rinne Sharingan, gaining the reward, the majority of Kaguya Otsutsuki's power. New abilities acquired, all-killing ash bones, true unity with nature, expansive truth-seeking orb, Yamatsu Hirasaka, God, nativity of a world of trees, Amanamanaka, infinite Tsukuyomi, modified. The instant the Rinne Sharingan awakened, Shinji gained not only an immortal body but also Kaguya's extraordinary abilities. This eye had originally belonged to Kaguya herself, though unlike Madara Uchiha, he would not be overtaken by her will. He quickly noticed that infinite Tsukuyomi was marked as a modified version, suggesting it differed from the original. Alert! Since the host's current world contains no chakra and has no purpose for creating white Zetsu, infinite Tsukuyomi's mechanism has been altered as compensation. Alert! Host can now project the Rinne Sharingan's power onto the moon to cast a Jinjutsu over the entire world, making all humanity aware of the arrival of a cosmic overlord and the apocalyptic threat of a god-level disaster. When used with God, nativity of a world of trees, the host can absorb voluntary offerings of harmless amounts of energy from the population. Hearing the system's explanation, Shinji was momentarily stunned. Infinite Tsukuyomi had been transformed into a technique capable of drawing energy from the entire planet's population and channeling it into himself. That was beyond powerful. Boros noticed the transformation and could feel Shinji's power growing deeper and more unfathomable. His own blood began to race, and despite his exhaustion, strength flooded back into his body. Shinji! Just how much more can you surprise me? Show me! With a fierce grin, Boros spread his arms wide, welcoming the arrival of Shinji's ultimate form. Chapter 113, Final Truth-Seeking Orb vs. Collapsing Star Roaring Cannon. All-killing ash bones. Shinji unleashed two sharp, gray bones from his hands in an instant. The moment they struck Boros, his body began to wither and collapse, disintegrating into fine ash within seconds. Oh! Yet Boros' body reformed almost immediately, his regeneration erasing any sign of injury. Even so, the technique had bought Shinji a few precious seconds. Without hesitation, Shinji teleported high into the sky, closing the distance to the moon in an instant. His Rinne Sharingan, which had been open in its normal state, now widened until it was almost perfectly round. At the same time, the moon, nearly full and pale against the once clear sky, underwent a sudden transformation. Its silver glow turned crimson, and an intricate Rinne Sharingan with 9 tomo appeared on its surface. The moon! What's happening? It looks just like the Kamui eye. Did he do this? This power, it's beyond anything imaginable. The eerie blood moon hung above the earth, leaving those below frozen in awe and fear. Shine upon the world, infinite Tsukuyomi. Shinji formed a one-handed seal, pressing his index and middle fingers vertically before his Rinne Sharingan. Now, become one. As the final hand sign was completed, a faint, colossal image of Otsutsuki Kagaya appeared in the heavens. She looked down upon the planet with a sinister smile, the blood moon positioned like a jewel at her brow. Shinji's expression remained steady as he met her illusory gaze. Unless Kagaya could truly manifest in this world, she was harmless to him. And even if she did appear, he still held his ultimate trump card, the Flying Thunder God, Saitama summoning technique. The next moment, the infinite Tsukuyomi activated. The blood moon's surface erupted in a blinding radiance, casting its light across every corner of the earth. No matter how deep in the mountains, far underground, or sealed within buildings, no human could evade its glow. Only Tatsumaki reacted in time, instinctively raising an energy barrier around herself and the other S-class heroes. The shimmering wall shielded them from the moon's illusion. If Shinji had wished, one of his wooden clones could have shattered that barrier instantly, trapping them in the dream. But there was no reason to bother. Saitama, originally within Tatsumaki's protection, found himself outside its safety when he reached for the sunflower seeds he and Shinji had been sharing. They were sitting on the ground just beyond the barrier, and his casual reach accidentally poked a hole through it. What's this? Bubble gum? Pop! The barrier broke with a small burst. The infinite Tsukuyomi's light washed over Saitama, but it had no effect at all. He simply kept eating sunflower seeds, unbothered by the spectacle. Meanwhile, every other human on Earth now bore grayish-purple Rinnegan in their eyes. In their minds, a vivid vision began to play out the battle between Shinji and Boros in rapid succession. The vision even showed what would happen if Boros released the collapsing star-roaring cannon. The Earth would be reduced to a blazing, desolate hell. Every trace of life on the surface would be annihilated, humanity completely erased from existence. Yet this was nothing more than an illusion born from the infinite Tsukuyomi. With Saitama present, such an end could never truly come to pass. Divine, birth of the world of trees. At that moment, Shinji unleashed another vital jutsu, one designed to work in perfect harmony with the infinite Tsukuyomi and essential to its full effect. Across the globe, gigantic trees began to rise, or more accurately, the divine tree itself emerged in countless places. It drew in the energy that people willingly surrendered, channeling it through its vast form and pouring it directly into Shinji. By this time, Boros had already restored his body. In truth, his regeneration was instantaneous, but the dust release, detachment of the primitive world technique had delayed him. That jutsu brought immediate and irreversible death on contact, forcing Boros to let his body be completely reduced to ash before rebuilding himself. The process cost him precious seconds. What is he doing? When Boros finally moved to attack, the infinite Tsukuyomi and the divine birth of the tree world were already in effect. Instead of striking right away, he hesitated, his gaze fixed on Shinji high above and on the massive blood-red sphere hanging in the sky. By now, people across the world were already offering their strength to Shinji. In the shadow of humanity's possible extinction, very few could stand idle. Most lifted their arms toward the sky, letting the faint life force within them flow away. Even psychos, deep beneath Z-City, had fallen under the infinite Tsukuyomi's sway. She knew Boros could achieve her dream of wiping out humanity, yet she chose to support Shinji instead. In her mind, if humanity's end was ever to come, it should be brought about by her and Shinji, not by an alien conqueror like Boros. Without hesitation, she gave him her share of energy, trusting him absolutely. Though the power from each person was meager, most being ordinary humans, when multiplied by billions, it became something far greater. The divine tree didn't need to trap anyone with vines, it simply absorbed their willing offerings and transmitted them instantly to Shinji. I see, so this is your ultimate move. Feeling Shinji's power surge without limit, Boros understood that his opponent intended to end their battle decisively. In that case, I'll show you my own final technique. An immense and violently destructive energy began to gather within Boros' body. I'll unleash everything I have and erase you, along with the entire surface of this planet. As their powers climbed higher and higher, the overflow lashed out like endless bolts of lightning, striking the heavens and the ground alike. The skies shifted in color, and the earth trembled violently. Oh! What's happening? They're going to decide it now. Everyone, take cover. The heroes below turned pale with dread. Collapsing star roaring cannon. The moment Boros completed his gathering of power and released his devastating attack, Shinji had just absorbed the final fraction of humanity's energy. Amanamanaka. In a single instant, Shinji pulled Boros into a vast spherical dimension. There, he transformed into the Ten Tails and conjured an enormous truth-seeking ball that continued to expand without end. Final Truth-Seeking Ball. Chapter 114, Boros Defeat. The Origin Sphere space was a core realm created by Shinji through Amanamanaka, a tangible, physical domain rather than an illusion. Beyond it, he could form other extreme environments such as the lava prison, frozen mountains, sulfuric sea, endless desert, and supergravity space, but the Origin Sphere space stood as the ultimate battlefield. By dragging Boros into this realm, Shinji could fight without any concern for collateral damage. Everyone else remained in the real world, so even if Boros' collapsing star roaring cannon completely destroyed the Origin Sphere space, it would not matter. Shinji could recreate it whenever he wished. Ah! Boros roared, unleashing the collapsing star roaring cannon directly at Shinji. Even when he realized the space around them had suddenly shifted, the energy already released could not be recalled. His aim was no longer planetary destruction, but defeating Shinji himself. As the devastating blast surged forward, Shinji, in his Ten Tails form, expanded the truth-seeking ball to an immense scale. The sphere continued to grow until it far surpassed the collapsing star roaring cannon in size, appearing like a black miniature planet. When it reached its limit, it became the final truth-seeking ball, a power capable of erasing all things and returning the world to pure nothingness. At that moment, Shinji wielded not only the might of Kagaya Otsutsuki but also the collective energy of billions of people from across the globe. Every fragment of that strength was condensed into the final truth-seeking ball. The two overwhelming forces collided, their energies twisting and grinding against each other. After a tense instant, the final truth-seeking ball consumed the collapsing star roaring cannon entirely, setting off an explosion strong enough to obliterate the entire Origin Sphere space. In a single moment, everything within was reduced to nothing. Alert! The host has defeated the cosmic overlord Boros. Reward, 500 points. The aftermath left the Origin Sphere space in ruins. Boros lay in the fragmented void, reduced to his head and part of his upper torso, his body shriveled like a dried husk. The collapsing star roaring cannon had drained every last trace of his strength, leaving only a few shallow breaths and no ability to regenerate. Shinji's state was not much better. While forming the truth-seeking ball, he had been unable to shift into an intangible state, and the clash between the final truth-seeking ball and the collapsing star roaring cannon occurred in an instant. If he had phased at that precise moment, the final truth-seeking ball would have phased with him. Although he could still have won afterward, since Boros would have been left powerless after firing his cannon, that was not the kind of victory he sought. He chose instead to confront Boros head-on. At the very least, he still had Izanagi as an unbeatable safeguard. Now lying on the ground, Shinji was missing his left arm and right leg, his body torn and drenched in blood. Even so, he was in slightly better shape than Boros. I lost. Boros' voice was faint, but he clung to a sliver of consciousness, able to sense that Shinji's life force still lingered. Probably. I'm not exactly fine myself, cough, cough, Shinji replied before spitting out a mouthful of blood. I see, so the prophecy was right. This truly was an evenly matched battle. Realizing Shinji was also in terrible shape, Boros felt a sense of peace wash over him. Yeah, Shinji replied softly, offering no further words. He had already begun casting his technique. In his only remaining right eye, a single Sharingan with 3 tomo appeared, its crimson glow steady and cold. Thanks, you've helped me fulfill my wish. Boros forced the words out with the last of his breath. If there's a chance, let's fight again in the next life. It was clear he had accepted his death. Though defeated, it had been after a fierce and equal struggle. This was exactly the kind of battle he had longed for, one fought against a true equal. To die this way left no regrets. Ugh! Boros suddenly coughed up a mouthful of blood, his life hanging by a thread. Izanagi. At that instant, Shinji sacrificed the three-tomo Sharingan in his right eye to activate the forbidden technique. Reality itself was rewritten, erasing the fact that he had been grievously injured and restoring his body to perfect condition in a heartbeat. Even without Izanagi, he would not have truly died, for Kagaya's power had rendered him immortal. Only someone like Saitama could completely overwhelm him. But Izanagi gave him immediate recovery, allowing him to act before Boros drew his final breath. Without it, his wounds would have taken time to heal, and Boros would have already been lost. What nonsense are you talking about? We still have a chance to fight in this life, why wait for the next? With his strength renewed, Shinji teleported to Boros' side. Dropping to one knee, he placed a hand on Boros' chest, channeling the energy needed to restart his regeneration. Boros, who had been moments away from death, was abruptly pulled back from the brink. The surge of energy sparked his recovery, and his body began rapidly repairing itself. His vision cleared, and his breath steadied. He gazed at Shinji in silence, taking in his completely restored condition. Don't look at me like that. I almost died just now too, I just have a way to return, Shinji said evenly. So in the end, that prophecy was unreliable, Boros murmured after a long pause. Come on. This space is collapsing, Shinji replied. With that, he took hold of Boros and left the origin sphere space. Because Shinji had drawn Boros into the origin sphere space, the collision between the truth-seeking orbs and the collapsing star-roaring cannon had occurred entirely within that dimension, sparing the real world from destruction. The spaceship and its power core remained intact, but the core's energy came from Boros himself. Having poured nearly all of it into the collapsing star-roaring cannon, what little remained was not enough to sustain the vessel. The ship now trembled violently, threatening to tear itself apart. Is it over? Why did Shinji and that alien just vanish? Maybe they shifted the battlefield. If that last attack had gone off here, we'd all be dead. The ship above us is shaking hard. Is it about to crash? That would mean the fight's done. Probably. What a terrifying battle, no wonder Madame Shibabawa made such a prophecy. By now, Bang and the others cared little about the exact outcome of Shinji's fight with Boros. They had no idea that although Shinji had saved Boros in time, the alien's power was almost entirely gone. It was similar to black sperm after the Monster Association War, reduced to a single cell, except Boros was still vastly stronger, at least retaining his incredible physical strength. Chapter 115, Domineering Execution. Z-City was as calm as ever. Although monsters occasionally appeared, professional heroes usually arrived in time to deal with them. This morning, a monster showed up in the city center. It was a massive, 3 to 4 meter tall tiger-level threat with the build of a bear. I'm the result of wearing a bear costume every day until I mutated into the Bearman. I'm here to take revenge on humanity. As was tradition in this world, most monsters would patiently announce their names and backstories before causing trouble, and Bearman was no exception. It's because of the human-created social system that I was forced to wear a bear costume every day just to make a living. Now I will destroy human society. After declaring his grand plan for revenge, Bearman lunged at the people nearby. Ah! Run! The monster is going to kill us. Panic spread instantly down the entire street. The next moment, a towering figure appeared in front of Bearman. He was not as big as Bearman, but still stood a solid 2 meters 40. His battered battle-worn armor and crimson cape hung from a humanoid frame, yet his single eye and pointed ears marked him as something far from human. What the hell? Bearman flinched at the sudden appearance of this stranger. Are you human or monster? If you're a monster, get out of my way and don't interfere with my revenge. Bearman barked, still unsure of who or what he was facing. He had no idea that the one standing before him was Boros, the dominator of the universe. At least for now, Boros remained the undisputed strongest monster, excluding God, of course. As for Demon Garu, that would be a story for later. Boros' strength was not yet fully restored. His earlier collapsing star-roaring cannon had drained every drop of energy from him, and if not for Shinji extending his life, he would have died instantly. Still, his energy loss was not irreversible. With some recovery time, his full power would return. In just a few days, more than half of it was already back. Too weak. Sensing Bearman's strength, Boros shook his head in disappointment. What? Bearman's face twisted in rage at being looked down on. Bear power. He swung a massive paw down at Boros' head. For a normal person, that blow could have crushed a skull outright. But when it struck Boros, his head didn't even shift a millimeter. Bearman froze in disbelief. This strange humanoid had taken his strongest hit without even flinching, completely unscathed. Boros then casually threw a punch. The moment his fist connected with Bearman's chest, Bearman's entire body exploded into a cloud of blood mist. Alert! Your companion Boros has defeated the tiger-level monster Bearman, reward gained, 15 points. Was that a hero? Isn't that the so-called dominator of the universe Boros, the one who wanted to destroy Earth? He actually helped us by defeating a monster? Looks like he's become a pro-hero now, huh? Could it be that after being defeated by Kamui, he decided to stand on humanity's side? The sight of Boros appearing and defeating the monster instantly stirred up heated discussion among the crowd. However, Boros didn't linger. With a single punch, he blasted the Bearman into a cloud of blood mist, then vanished without a trace. To ordinary people, his departure was too fast for the naked eye to follow. In no time, Boros returned to the Hero Association's Z-City branch. The tiger-level monster that just showed up has been dealt with, he reported to the staff. Ah, why yes. The sudden appearance of Boros startled everyone present. Even though he was now registered as a pro-hero with the Hero Association, many still feared him because of who he was. After all, everyone on Earth had witnessed almost the entire process of the legendary battle between Shinji and Boros, thanks to the infinite Tsukuyomi's influence. The only scene the public hadn't seen was the final clash in the planetary space, when the final truth-seeking ball and the collapsing star-roaring cannon collided. Boros' identity as the overlord of the universe, along with his power capable of wiping out humanity, had been deeply etched into people's minds. Most of the staff here were ordinary people, so it was hard for them not to fear him. Sigh. Seeing the humans so afraid of him, Boros couldn't help but feel a touch of helplessness. Without saying a word, he turned and left. He soon returned to Shinji's home. Boros, this is already your second mission. How do you feel? Are you getting used to it? Shinji asked as Boros stepped inside. It's fine, Boros nodded. But, there's one thing that's been bothering me. I keep sensing a familiar presence nearby, though I can't quite tell what it is. Shinji smiled without saying anything. Clearly, he knew something, but he didn't seem inclined to tell Boros. Just then, the television broadcast reported another monster sighting in Z-City, a powerful demon-level threat. Time to move again, Shinji said with a faint smile. This time, should you go or should I? I'll go, Boros answered without hesitation. After all, I promised you I'd make up for the mistakes I've made. With that, he turned and walked out, carrying himself with the demeanor of a hero, though the overwhelming presence of the cosmic overlord still lingered. Domineering. Unyielding. Chapter 116, The Impatient Tatsumaki. The scene returned to the moment Shinji destroyed Boros' sphere-like domain. The ship! Is the ship going to crash? I want to go home. Mom. Could something have happened to Lord Boros? Shut your mouth, don't say such nonsense. How could Lord Boros be in trouble? He's never been defeated. Inside the ship, the few surviving low-level fighters felt the vessel tilt sharply and groan as if moments from tearing apart. Panic set in immediately. As the craft gradually leaned and began to descend, Tatsumaki, unable to stay still, flew forward as though searching for something. Tatsumaki! Don't go over there! The ship is going to fall! Bang shouted after her. Wait, isn't this spot dangerous for us, too? Metalbat asked, glancing up at the massive ship now threatening to crash. This is bad. Let's head toward the association headquarters. Bang urged, deciding he could no longer afford to worry about Tatsumaki's actions. Angel Dash. Pori prisoner, newly awakened and sensing danger, suddenly bolted into motion. Atomic Samurai, concerned for his student, quickly scooped up Ian and sprinted away. Is it over already? Only Saitama remained composed, turning to address Shinji's with clone. Yes. It's over, the clone confirmed with a nod. I see. Though Shinji's answer was vague, Saitama could tell Boros had been defeated. If the alien were still standing, the ship wouldn't be falling, and Shinji's clone wouldn't remain here unharmed. Still, a quiet sense of disappointment and loneliness stirred in him. That alien, whom Saitama had mistakenly called the Cosmic Dentist due to the similar sound between Overlord and Dentist in Japanese, had seemed like a formidable opponent at first. But in the end... Suddenly, Saitama looked at the wood clone. Shinji, why don't you have a match with me? He spoke casually, yet there was weight in his voice. Above them, the ship continued to tilt dangerously, but Saitama seemed unconcerned. He had always known Shinji was strong, but today's victory over the so-called strongest dentist in the universe only reinforced it. Perhaps Shinji could help him rediscover the emotions he had lost. Ever since Saitama had gone bald and gained invincible power, no battle had brought him fear or the thrill of combat. It was something that quietly troubled him. In some ways, he was not so different from Boros. The only real distinction was that Saitama fought for justice, while Boros lived for domination. To Boros, justice meant nothing, as only power was absolute. Throughout his reign, the alien had never cared for ideals. He could wipe out all life on a planet without the faintest hesitation. All right, once we're done here, I'll play a game with you, Shinji's wood clone replied, misunderstanding and assuming Saitama meant video games. No, I mean like your fight with the Cosmic Dentist, a real, all-out battle, Saitama clarified, his expression completely serious. That might be a bit difficult for me, the wood clone's face shifted into an awkward but polite smile. Faced with Saitama's challenge, there was no way the wood clone could casually agree on behalf of the real body. Also, Boros is the ruler of the universe, not the Cosmic Dentist. At least what he calls himself, the clone added, using the moment to correct Saitama's misunderstanding about Boros' title. Alright, if it's inconvenient for you, then forget it, Saitama replied, not pressing the matter. But still, isn't that the same as Cosmic Dentist? His face became completely blank, as though the distinction meant nothing to him. To his ears, the pronunciation was identical, and unless Shinji explained in detail what ruler meant, Saitama would always interpret it as dentist. The clone could only keep smiling. The truth was, this had nothing to do with convenience, he simply couldn't accept such a request in place of the real Shinji. While the clone's abilities and appearance matched the original's, he possessed his own independent will and absolute loyalty to the true body. Still, he chose not to explain. If Saitama realized the truth, he might seek out the real Shinji directly. If it were the actual Shinji standing here, he might agree to the fight, but that was far from certain. Meanwhile, Shinji and Boros stepped out from the sphere space and returned to the real world. The moment they arrived back on Earth, they saw the colossal spaceship plummeting toward the ground. See if you can save it. It'd be a shame to let such a huge ship crash like this, Shinji said to Boros, his tone making it clear the vessel held value in his eyes. I will do what I can. Boros paused briefly before nodding. Since Shinji had restored his life, his energy had been recovering at a remarkable pace. His power was renewable, his meteor burst mode functioned like anaerobic exercise for a human body, and just as stamina replenishes naturally, his energy could regenerate over time. The problem lay in the vastness of his reserves. When he fired the collapsing star roaring cannon, he had completely drained himself, and refilling that enormous energy pool would take considerable time. To put it in perspective, an ordinary person with 100 stamina might regain 1 point per second. Boros, however, possessed reserves in the tens of billions or even trillions. Even if he recovered 100 million units per second, it would still take a long time to fully restore his strength. Still, in the short time since Shinji revived him, he had already regained enough energy to power the massive ship. Raising his hand, Boros released a torrent of energy that poured directly into the vessel's power core, the radiant flow visible to the naked eye. With the new surge of power, the ship slowly steadied, tilting back into alignment until it hovered firmly in the sky once more. What's going on? Is the ship stable again? Lord Boros must have noticed us. That means he won the fight, right? We're saved! This is amazing. The remaining low-level crew were practically ready to celebrate on the spot. Shinji! Hearing the voice, Shinji turned to see Tatsumaki floating behind him, arms crossed, eyes fixed on him. Where did you disappear to just now? And why are you suddenly standing with that guy, acting like nothing happened? She asked, her voice carrying both sharpness and urgency. Shinji couldn't tell whether she was interrogating him out of annoyance or expressing genuine concern. Chapter 117, Submit to Me. After channeling enough energy to restore the ship's systems, Boros turned when he heard Tatsumaki's voice. His gaze lingered on her briefly before he spoke. I have already lost. There is no point in continuing the fight. He stated it plainly, without a shred of hesitation, the admission serving as both a declaration to her and an explanation to Shinji. So Shinji won. Looks like the so-called ruler of the universe is nothing special after all. Tatsumaki's voice carried smugness and a deliberate edge, as though she wanted to provoke. Boros was silent for a few seconds, then glanced at Shinji. What is with this arrogant little girl? Does your planet have some kind of system where children are sent to the battlefield? What? I am not a child. Tatsumaki's reply was immediate, her tone sharp and indignant. She knew full well how powerful Boros was. She had seen every moment of his battle against Shinji, and she was not reckless enough to challenge him directly. The remark had been nothing more than a way to vent her lingering frustration from their earlier encounter, where she had been so easily overpowered that it left a mark on her pride. It is fine, do not take her words to heart. She may be small in stature, but she is actually quite strong, Shinji said with a faint, almost teasing smile. What? Tatsumaki's hair seemed to bristle instantly. Hearing Shinji not only refuse to defend her but also refer to her as small was more than enough to irritate her further. She floated closer and began lightly striking his chest with her fists. Without the aid of her psychic powers, her physical strength was weaker than that of an ordinary person, making the blows completely harmless. She had no intention of using her powers either, knowing well that Shinji's strength surpassed even Boros. After a few token punches to release her irritation, she gave a short huff. I have recovered most of my strength. Leave the remaining enemies to me. That will not be necessary. From what I can sense, the only ones left aboard are low-level fighters without any real combat capability. Shinji gave a small nod as he spoke. Having just made Boros stabilize the ship, he was not about to allow Tatsumaki to dismantle it immediately afterward. So I did not even manage to do anything useful, she asked, her voice edged with annoyance. That is not true. You were the one who protected everyone, were you not? You are the reason I was able to go all out. As he answered, Shinji casually reached out and placed his hand on her head. Even though she was floating in the air, she was still well within his reach, and he gave her a light pat. For an instant, her eyes flickered with something unreadable, but the moment quickly passed as she brushed his hand away. First, I am not a child. I am older than you, so you are not allowed to touch my head. Second, The only reason I bother is to ensure no one thinks I lack the ability to protect my teammates. Beyond that, I do not care in the slightest whether they live or die." "Yes, yes," Shinji replied, his tone deliberately casual. "Master." Genos appeared at a run, his expression filled with urgency. "You are not injured, are you?" "I am fine." Shinji's voice was steady, without the slightest change. Seeing his teacher standing there unharmed and speaking as if the events just now were nothing of consequence, Genos let out a deep breath of relief, though a trace of astonishment remained in his gaze. He had witnessed firsthand how his teacher and Boros fought with a power that could tear apart any common sense. Other than the fact that the two of them had suddenly vanished in the final moments, it was hard to believe that after such a devastating battle, his teacher could remain completely unharmed. The sight was almost beyond comprehension. Genos shifted his gaze toward Boros and noted that although the alien's aura felt diminished, he didn't appear to be seriously injured either. "You're Shinji's disciple?" Boros suddenly spoke, his voice breaking the silence. Genos, caught off guard by the alien's unexpected greeting, took a moment before answering. "Yes." Boros merely sensed the energy within Genos and found it lacking. He had assumed that someone who called Shinji master would possess far greater strength, but there was no need for further comment. "What happened in the end? Why are you both like this now?" Genos asked, unable to hide his curiosity. Just moments ago, his teacher and Boros had been clashing with a force that could reshape the world, yet now they stood there as if nothing had occurred. The sudden shift felt inexplicable. "It's over. We can head back," Shinji replied calmly. "The crisis on Earth is essentially resolved, though rebuilding City A will be challenging." City A had already been erased in an instant by a single blast from Boros' spaceship. To make matters worse, Shinji's own Super Shinra Tensei had carved out a massive basin spanning dozens of kilometers. Under such destruction, the idea of restoring City A anytime soon was unrealistic. In the end, the Hero Association would abandon the plan to rebuild it altogether. Instead, they would reinforce and expand the association's headquarters into a fortified zone for top heroes and the wealthy elite. The land where City A once stood would be repurposed into a central transport hub, complete with a rapid rail system linking all major cities. Once the spaceship had stabilized in midair, Bang and the others, who had been rushing toward the headquarters, noticed something unusual. "Huh. That's odd, the ship's flying again? Look, over there!" Tatsumaki, Shinji, and that alien, they're all together. "So that means the battle's over. Should we head over?" Realizing the ship was no longer about to crash, Bang and the group redirected their steps toward Shinji's position. When they arrived and learned Boros had been defeated, relief swept over them. Considering the overwhelming power Boros had displayed earlier, none of them were confident they could have taken him down in a direct fight. Although Shinji won, the enemy doesn't seem too badly injured, Bang observed with a frown. From his perspective, Boros still carried enough strength to threaten nearly any S-class hero present, except for Shinji. "I was as good as dead. Shinji saved me," Boros stated plainly. "What? Why would you save an enemy like this? This is the ruler of the universe who intended to wipe out humanity." Atomic Samurai and the others were openly shocked and confused. They were not the sort to kill every monster on sight, but an enemy of Boros' caliber, if they had the chance to eliminate him, they would never hesitate. "You all know he's the ruler of the universe. Wouldn't it be wasteful to let someone like that die?" Shinji said casually. "Think about it, if the Hero Association could gain the ruler of the universe as an ally, our ability to protect the world would increase greatly. And the value of his spaceship alone could offset all the infrastructure losses from City A's destruction." Then Shinji turned toward Boros. "So, Boros, are you willing to submit to me?" Chapter 118, Companions in Name. When Shinji had defeated Boros, he could have immediately used Jinjutsu to control him, just as he had done with Vaccine Man before. Instead, he chose to first ask Boros for his willingness as a show of respect, deciding that consent would come before coercion. If Boros agreed, then he could apply the control afterward. If Boros refused, then he would have no choice but to force the control, since leaving someone like Boros alive without control would be a potential threat. If he did not control him, he could not allow him to remain alive. Though for someone like me, the ruler of the universe, submitting to another is a humiliation, this life of mine is yours. I have no right to refuse, do I? Boros understood his situation clearly and recognized that if Shinji could kill him once, he could just as easily kill him a second time. He no longer cared much about life or death, but since this life was given back to him by Shinji, his personal feelings did not matter, since refusal was not an option. If he had to be honest, deep down, he did not want to accept it, because for the ruler of the universe to live under someone else's authority was harder to bear than death itself. At this point, Shinji added, or maybe I should put it another way. Aside from forbidding you to harm humans, I will not impose any restrictions. I only want insurance. I will not force you or order you to do anything. Our relationship will still be equal. With that, Shinji extended his hand toward Boros, offering terms that protected humanity while preserving Boros's pride. I can go with this. That concession made the idea much easier for Boros to accept, even if he could not refuse anyway. Boros also reached out and clasped Shinji's hand, choosing compliance over pointless resistance and acknowledging the bond that would define their future actions. From now on, we will call each other companions, not superior and subordinate, Shinji stressed. All right. Boros nodded. With Shinji taking such care to respect his pride, he could hardly refuse, and the simple handshake sealed a pact that balanced restraint with dignity. Alert! The host has controlled the universal ruler Boros with Jinjutsu. Reward, 200 points. Once Boros accepted the invitation, Shinji simultaneously applied the Jinjutsu control. Of course, he had no intention of breaking his promise. The control was only to ensure Boros could never again harm humans. Since the Jinjutsu was enhanced by the system, its mechanism was simple: defeat the enemy to gain the option to control, which meant Boros had no awareness that he was under its effect. The control would activate only if Boros broke his word and tried to harm humans, making resistance impossible, and Shinji simply hoped that day would never come. Boring. Tatsumaki gave a dismissive snort and flew away. She had only come to confirm Shinji's condition, and once she saw he was safe, she had no interest in staying, so she left without looking back. How delightful. So Boros will be joining the Hero Association, then? We could just make his hero name Universal Ruler, Bang said with a grin, all seriousness gone now that the battle was over. No. I am no longer the ruler of the universe. This planet has someone stronger than me, Boros replied with a small shake of his head. Huh. But Universal Dentist is such a great name. Why give it up? Saitama had somehow appeared right behind Boros without anyone noticing, as if he had been there all along. The sudden voice from behind startled Boros, for he had not sensed anyone's approach. He spun around, only to be met by the glare of a bald head. He recognized it faintly. This was one of the intruders who had boarded his ship earlier. Though they had never crossed paths at close range before, this was the first time Boros could sense the bald man's energy directly. Not knowing was one thing, but feeling it in person was another. The power radiating from him was immeasurable. Boros could not gauge his exact strength, yet the fact that the man had approached from behind without being detected proved he was far from ordinary. Still, Boros was aware of his own limitations. His current weakened state meant there was only so much he could recover. Even so, the encounter left him thinking that this planet truly harbored an unusual number of hidden powerhouses. Staying here might not be such a bad idea after all. Because his attention was entirely focused on measuring Saitama's strength, Boros failed to notice that the bald man had casually referred to him as the Universal Dentist. Meanwhile, Rank A Class 1 hero Sweet Mask arrived in City A. He had been filming a drama in a nearby city when the sudden destruction of City A sent shockwaves and a deafening roar across the land. Without hesitation, he rushed over to see for himself. By the time he reached the scene, the battle was already over. So it wasn't an illusion after all. Cydia really was destroyed by aliens, he murmured, gazing at the ruins of what had once been a vibrant city. Back during the infinite Tsukuyomi, he had questioned whether what he saw was a mere hallucination. Now, the truth was certain. "Ah, you're here too, sweet mask," Metalbat called out after spotting him standing on higher ground. Seems the enemy that appeared this time was formidable. But you all completely failed to protect Cydia. I'm truly disappointed. Sweet Mask's expression hardened. Though he had learned about the situation during the infinite Tsukuyomi, witnessing the devastation firsthand stirred his uncompromising sense of justice into anger. "Hey, are you here to pick a fight? You show up late and still act all high and mighty?" Metalbat shot back, frowning. "I may have arrived late, but you were here in City A. You failed to protect it," Sweet Mask said flatly. "We were inside the headquarters when the enemy suddenly appeared. He destroyed City A with a single strike. Even if we had rushed out instantly, it would have been too late," Atomic Samurai explained. "So what? You think the media won't hold you responsible?" Sweet Mask retorted, his tone unchanged. "What do you mean by that? Are you trying to smear us? We fought with everything we had. Whose side are you even on?" Tatsumaki stepped forward, unable to contain her irritation. "I'm on the side of justice," Sweet Mask replied with absolute conviction. His devotion to justice was extreme, leaving no tolerance for mistakes among heroes. In his eyes, the destruction of City A was an unforgivable failure. Except for Kamui, the rest of you S-class heroes are pathetic. I suggest you all retire voluntarily. With that, Sweet Mask leapt down from his perch, landing directly in front of Metalbat and the others. Shinji's mouth twitched slightly at the remark. "Not my problem, but you really didn't need to drag me into your grudges either." Chapter 119, Shooting Star at the Horizon. "Hey!" Metalbat cracked his neck with a sharp snap and, taking on a bold delinquent stance, began striding towards Sweet Mask. His glare was full of irritation as he shouted, "Don't act all high and mighty here. I don't care if you're some idol or whatever, I'll still beat you up." Sweet Mask, however, stood his ground, calm and poised, his voice steady as he replied, "Do you want to know why I've never accepted promotion to S-Class? It's to stop weak and foolish people like you from reaching that rank. That is why I have remained at the very top of A-Class." The tension between them grew thick, neither willing to back down. Then, without warning, a long, cylindrical capsule pod descended from the sky, streaking down until it struck the ground with a loud metallic impact. The sudden landing drew the attention of everyone present. Their eyes turned toward the pod as a mechanical hiss escaped from it. The capsule slowly opened, revealing a humanoid robot with slender antennae sprouting from its head. Metal Knight? Sweet Mask was the first to recognize it. "Weren't you supposed to attend the emergency meeting with the others? Why are you only arriving now?" His tone was sharp, his dissatisfaction at Metal Knight's absence clear. Metal Knight ignored the remark. Instead, the robot's head tilted upward, its gaze fixed on the massive spaceship hovering high above. "So that's the true identity of the unknown spacecraft, remarkable." His voice carried an almost reverent admiration, even though he was speaking through a remote control. "Metal Knight, what are you doing here? The battle's already over." Genos stepped forward, his expression guarded. Earlier, during a pause in the fighting, another S-Class hero, Drive Knight, had privately warned him that Metal Knight was not to be trusted and should be avoided. This was Genos' first direct encounter with the man, but Drive Knight's warning was still fresh in his mind, making him watch Metal Knight's every move with suspicion. "I'm here to recover the UFO," Metal Knight said, his tone matter-of-fact. "For the sake of peace, we require stronger weapons." "Wait. The owner of the ship is still here. If you want to take it, you should at least ask for his permission," Shinji interjected, gesturing toward Boros, who stood quietly beside him. Metal Knight turned his attention to the pair, his sensors scanning them. Kamui, an enemy? The realization struck him at once. Boros clearly wasn't human, and combined with Shinji's statement about the ship's owner, it was obvious that this towering, one-eyed warrior was the enemy commander from this incident. What? You actually spared the enemy? Sweet Mask's eyes widened. He had been so focused on Metal Bat and the others that he only now realized Boros, stripped of his meteor burst form, was still alive. This was the same form he had seen under the infinite Tsukuyomi, and in his eyes, the presence of any evil, especially its leader, was intolerable. For Sweet Mask, whose moral code allowed no compromise, this was unthinkable. No evil deserved to live, no matter the circumstances. He turned sharply to Shinji, anger sharpening his tone. Kamui, what is the meaning of this? Why didn't you kill him? Shinji's reply was calm, almost deliberate. I didn't just refrain from killing him, but I also saved his life when he was moments from death. Why? Sweet Mask's voice rose, his frustration twisting his expression into something wild and threatening. Shinji's tone was calm as he spoke. Because he can also become a hero. He can also uphold justice. Restoring the damage to City A isn't beyond his reach. Sweet Mask ignored his words completely. An enemy is an enemy. Evil is evil. In that moment, disappointment settled over him. He recalled watching Shinji battle Boros to protect all of humanity and how he had realized his own limitations. It was then that he had resolved to push Shinji into becoming the perfect hero. Yet, the man before him was not the righteous figure he had envisioned. Shinji had spared someone he deemed evil. All right then. Shinji decided to stop reasoning with him. He knew Sweet Mask carried a monster gene. The image he showed to the public was a facade, hiding his true form, one that was monstrously disfigured. Monsters did not think like humans, and Sweet Mask's nature had gradually twisted his perception of justice into something rigid and unyielding. That kind of mind could not understand the human heart. Reasoning was useless. Instead, Shinji said, in my view, there is no absolute justice or absolute evil. If you insist on clinging to such rigid beliefs, then I will show you that justice itself can also become evil. Small black spheres began forming in Shinji's hands, slowly rising into the air as his body lifted from the ground. Boros, move your ship elsewhere, Shinji ordered. Understood, Boros replied, and without another word, he used the power sphere to teleport the ship to a desolate region far from City A. Watching the black spheres drift upward, Child Emperor felt a sudden unease. What's he doing? The next instant, the spheres erupted with an immense gravitational force. The ground fractured beneath them, and countless stones of all sizes were torn free, spiraling toward the dark orbs. Is he insane? Is he attacking us? Metal Bat shouted. No. He's doing something else. Just head for the HQ building, now. Bang's voice was urgent, and before the debris could lift him, he dashed away. The others followed quickly, using their abilities to escape the pull. In this world, anyone who could become an S-class hero already possessed superhuman physical prowess. Even C-class heroes were at least on par with elite athletes. However, Atomic Samurai was weaker than the other S-class heroes. His strength faltered against the crushing pull, and his body began to lift into the air. Genos grabbed him by the leg, yanking him back to solid footing, and helped him make it to the HQ. Once inside, the building's reinforced structure withstood the violent pull outside. Above them, a dozen colossal meteoric spheres had formed, Shinji's Chibaku Tensei. The original meteoric disaster star technique produced two spheres of only 250 and 516 meters in diameter, but now, wielding the combined might of the six paths and Kagaya, Shinji had created meteors over a kilometer wide each. Sweet Mask stared, stunned. What is he trying to do? What's the point of these meteors? Probably to make someone face reality, Genos replied, his tone steady. He already understood Shinji's intent. Under Shinji's control, the massive meteors shifted position, hovering ominously. Horizon meteor. One by one, the enormous spheres began their descent, plummeting toward the Hero Association HQ. Chapter 120, Sweet Mask's Helplessness. He's completely lost it. Can our HQ building even withstand that? Metal Bat blurted out, his eyes fixed on the cluster of meteors plummeting from the sky. The sheer size of them made his voice waver with a mix of disbelief and urgency. Mr. Sitch mentioned earlier that the HQ was built with extremely sturdy materials by Metal Knight. It should be able to hold, Atomic Samurai said, attempting to reassure everyone present. However, a large robot stepped forward, and Metal Knight's voice came through it with calm detachment. No, with meteors of this magnitude, and with several approaching at once, this building will almost certainly be destroyed. His lack of concern made it obvious he was speaking through a remotely controlled machine. Even if the robot was obliterated, he wouldn't suffer any real loss, and the nearby cities were far enough away to be of no concern to him. Was this caused by that fool, Sweet Mask? What are we supposed to do now? Metal Bat's glare landed sharply on Sweet Mask, his tone dripping with blame. It was, in his view, entirely Sweet Mask's fault for provoking the situation with careless words. I get where Shinji's coming from, Pori Prisoner said, his voice tinged with frustration. If you defeat an unbeatable enemy and then get questioned like that, anyone would be furious. But, is he really not going to spare us this time? Silver Fong, what exactly was Shinji trying to do just now? Child Emperor asked, remembering how Bang had abruptly headed to the HQ mid-conversation, clearly seeking shelter. Bang tilted his head with a playful grin. Truthfully, I don't know. But then his expression shifted, becoming serious. I do know Shinji well enough to say he wouldn't harm us without reason. I understand him better than most. That's not very comforting, you know. Atomic Samurai muttered with a nervous chuckle, watching the meteors grow larger in the sky. Saitama turned to his clone, Shinji, his tone casual but direct. I don't know what exactly you're aiming for, but if this building really can't take the hit, should I just smash those meteors myself? No problem, the clone replied with a small nod. Outside, away from the relative safety of the HQ, Boros stood motionless, eyes fixed on the incoming meteors. Unlike the others, he hadn't sought shelter. Instead, he was quietly trying to decipher Shinji's intentions. As the blazing projectiles closed the distance to mere meters from the HQ, clarity struck him. Shinji was forcing him to reveal where he stood. With that realization, Boros released a roar, igniting his meteor burst form. His aura flared, briefly returning to its former peak. Though his energy reserves had not fully recovered and he could only maintain the form for a short while, it was enough for this battle. In a blur of motion, Boros surged forward, weaving through the oncoming meteors. One after another, he struck them with devastating force, shattering them into countless fragments. The pieces rained down toward the HQ, but thanks to his efforts, most of the destructive force was nullified. The debris that did make contact scattered harmlessly, unable to penetrate the building's reinforced defenses. From Bang and the others' perspective, the scene was still terrifying. Countless fragments of rock continued to crash into the HQ, each impact shaking the structure violently. Even the specially reinforced glass began to show faint cracks under the strain. Fortunately, everyone had managed to survive without any serious injuries. In truth, Shinji had been holding back the entire time. Those kilometer-wide meteors had not been his full strength. If he had wished, he could have summoned a terminus orb capable of wiping out all of humanity, but Saitama would never have allowed such a thing. So we're safe now? It looks like that alien actually saved us? Pori Prisoner asked, his gaze fixed on Boros, who still floated in midair even after shattering the meteors. And man, he is fine. That must be the case. I couldn't see his exact movements, but the fact that he entered that battle state again means he must have been the one to save us, Child Emperor said, nodding in agreement. Saved by the enemy? I think I'm starting to understand Shinji's intent now, Atomic Samurai muttered, realization dawning on his face. See? He wouldn't harm us without reason, Bang added with certainty. Their eyes then turned instinctively towards Sweet Mask. Some suspected it had been his hostility that provoked Shinji, while others believed Shinji had merely been giving him a warning. Regardless, all signs seemed to point to Sweet Mask being at the center of the problem. Sweet Mask lowered his head in silence. He wasn't avoiding their gaze, rather, in front of Shinji, he felt the full weight of his helplessness. In the next moment, Shinji suddenly appeared right in front of him. Do you still see any meaning in debating justice and evil? When death was about to claim you, it was the evil in your eyes that saved you. His voice was calm but firm. After this, whether others view me as justice or evil no longer matters to me. As long as I believe my actions are right, that is enough. Other people's opinions hold little weight. Sweet Mask said nothing, his expression unreadable. Shinji, seeing no need to push further, left the rest for him to consider. My apologies for frightening you all just now, Shinji said, turning to address the group. It's fine. We were startled, but at least no one was hurt, Atomic Samurai replied with a small smile, scratching his head. Giving that guy a lesson was probably for the best, Metal Bat remarked, making it clear that guy referred to Sweet Mask. I don't mind. Silver Fawn's at the age where he's more sensitive to shocks like this, Atomic Samurai teased. I'm not that old yet. My body's still in great shape, Bang shot back. Their brief exchange drew a round of laughter from Atomic Samurai, and with it, much of the tension in the room faded. Genos, Saitama, let's go, Shinji said as he prepared to leave. Okay, Saitama replied casually, as though nothing unusual had happened. Genos followed immediately. Before stepping away, Shinji looked back at Sweet Mask. Although I don't share your idea of justice, if you ever have doubts or questions, you can come find me. With that, Shinji left the HQ. Chapter 121, Hero Codename, Cosmic Overlord. Wait! About the UFO. At that moment, a robot controlled by Metal Knight rushed over. The reason he had sent one of his machines here was to secure the UFO. This wasn't just any ship, it was the vessel of the Cosmic Overlord, practically representing the peak of universal technology. Its value was beyond words. Just as Metal Knight arrived, Boros descended from the sky, reverting to his base form, the release power state. Boros, what are your thoughts regarding the ship? Shinji asked him directly. If possible, I'd like to keep my ship. In return, I'll hand over all the treasures on board as compensation for the destruction of this city. Boros replied calmly. In truth, he gave this answer mostly because of Shinji. From the moment Shinji had supplied him with energy to repair the ship, it was clear Shinji wanted the vessel preserved. Even so, Shinji had left the decision entirely in Boros's hands. If not for that consideration, Boros wouldn't have cared much about the ship at all. I see. That's truly a shame. Metal Knight's tone carried regret. The treasures held little value for him. What he truly desired was the ship itself. But Boros wasn't willing, and there was no way to force him, doing so would require the strength to support it. Metal Knight's power was highly unusual even among the S-class, since he could mass-produce forces at the dragon level of threat. But compared to Boros, he still didn't measure up. With no way to obtain what he wanted, Metal Knight simply recalled his robot and left. After the Dark Matter Pirates incident concluded, A-City was wiped off the world map. Aliens had invaded, and A-City disappeared. As a historic catastrophe, the media naturally covered it for days on end. In particular, reports about Shinji defeating the Cosmic Overlord, as well as the Overlord himself joining the Hero Association, were pushed heavily. At that point, the Hero Association's top priority was to show sincerity. Not only did A-City need to be rebuilt from nothing, but the refugees left homeless required financial aid. If Shinji hadn't urged the citizens of A-City to evacuate to other cities ahead of time, every last one of them would have been vaporized by Boros's energy cannon the moment the ship arrived. That outcome would have spared other cities from the burden of refugees, and the association would not have needed to distribute nearly as much aid. However, the citizens' survival created an enormous strain on the association and the surrounding cities. To calm public unrest, the Hero Association had no choice but to issue relief funds. Fortunately, the treasures Boros offered from his ship perfectly solved this problem. After all, they were called the Dark Matter Pirates. While Boros himself cared only for battle, his countless subordinates still needed to be provided for. Whenever they conquered a planet, Boros allowed them to plunder freely, which meant the ship had accumulated staggering amounts of wealth over the years. Of course, Shinji knew exactly what the association's executives were like. Aside from Sitch, few of them were trustworthy. So he and Boros personally oversaw the strict management of the treasure. Otherwise, the upper ranks of the association and their corporate backers would have siphoned off most of the wealth, leaving little to reach the refugees. Converted into value, every refugee from a city will receive 1 million yen in relief funds. Other cities also need to build more housing to settle them. In addition, each staff member of the headquarters and every hero who fought in the battle will receive a bonus. Metal Knight will get his commission. As for the remaining treasures, they will be under the joint care of myself and Boros. Does anyone have objections to this? Shinji discussed the allocations with the association's executives. 1 million yen might sound like a large amount, but in reality, it was only about $10,000. Not extravagant, but more than enough to show sincerity. On top of that, there would be ongoing relief payments, especially for those refugees who had owned homes in a city. Even though the number of A-City refugees was massive, the wealth stored on Boros's ship was more than enough to handle it. Strictly speaking, it wasn't really a discussion, since the executives had no room to refuse. Boros stood beside Shinji, and the two of them together put immense pressure on everyone present. I have no objections. I believe Kamui's proposed distribution of the alien treasures is fair, Sitch spoke up first. He was the only one who felt no pressure, since he fully supported Shinji's stance. The other executives, on the other hand, all had thoughts of skimming something off the top, the only difference being how much. But with Shinji and Boros's overwhelming power looming over them, none of them had the balls to say it out loud. The pressure was crushing. Shinji had already calculated every expenditure the Hero Association would need after the Dark Matter Pirates incident, leaving them with no excuse to demand extra funds. Since no one is speaking, I'll take that as agreement, Shinji said lightly. Wait! One of the executives couldn't hold back and spoke up. Oh? You have an objection? Feel free to say it directly, Shinji replied calmly. No, the man opened his mouth, but his words stalled. Shinji's demeanor stayed friendly, his faint smile free of arrogance. But beside him, Boros stood with his arms crossed, his single eye glaring at the man with a sharp, predatory look. That alone sent chills down the executive's spine. Even though the cosmic overlord had been recruited, his presence was still terrifying. Anyone could see the truth, aside from Shinji, Boros wasn't going to listen to anyone else. The man feared that if he spoke his mind, Boros might give him a free ticket to have an audience with God. Between money and survival, he knew which was more important. And no, nothing at all, he muttered, lowering his head. With the alien treasures allocated, the rest of the matters no longer concerned Shinji, and he had no interest in meddling further. Whatever remained of the treasure would be kept securely on the ship, and he had no intention of keeping any for himself. By the way, about Boros's hero codename. Why not decide it here as well? Sitch suggested. Let's just call him Cosmic Overlord. What do you think? I agree. At the very least, Boros will definitely be satisfied with it. Then it's settled. Boros, the Cosmic Overlord, we look forward to seeing your performance from here on. The executives made the decision in under half an hour, some out of laziness, others drenched in cold sweat and simply desperate for the meeting to end. Chapter 122, A-City Reconstruction Plan. The Hero Association was pushing forward at full speed with the reconstruction of A-City. However, they were not restoring the old residential areas. Instead, the focus was on building around the Hero Association's headquarters tower. The headquarters was set to undergo major reinforcement, reconstruction, and expansion, transforming into a fortress-like base of steel and stone. All heroes ranked A-class and above had the right to relocate to the headquarters fortress. As long as they applied, approval was almost guaranteed. There were also plans to construct highways, rail systems, and other routes branching out from the fortress, allowing heroes to reach any city as quickly as possible. But before any of that could happen, the ruins of Old A City needed to be cleared, along with filling in the massive basin left behind by the Super Shinra Tensei. According to the association's initial projections, if the project were handed entirely to the government, it would take decades to fully complete. Of course, that's only if it's given to the government. One of the staff members working on the design blueprints raised both hands and spread his fingers. 10 years. We could complete the entire project in just 10 years. What, isn't that a bit exaggerated? Could the difference really be that huge? The others in the room found it hard to believe. If we use traditional construction methods, no way. But this time, the entire project is going to be entrusted to a single person, and that is. Before he could finish, the building began to shake. DRRMM. DRRMM. The staff, unaware of what was happening, panicked immediately. The last time Boros had attacked, it had scarred them deeply. Although this tremor wasn't as strong as that one, it still triggered their fears. Something's wrong. A massive weapon is approaching the headquarters. At that moment, a worker burst in with the report. What? Don't tell me it's another spaceship like last time? Turn on the monitors. Show us what's outside. Everyone braced for the worst. When the external feed appeared on screen, what they saw was a mechanical monster larger than the entire headquarters tower. The violent shaking just now was caused by its landing. What is that thing? It's enormous. They immediately thought it was a mechanical monster attack, their faces twisted in fear. It's not a spaceship, but that thing doesn't look any easier to deal with. Call the heroes right now. We can't let the headquarters fall again. At the moment, the only S-class hero in the building is Tank Top Master. He and some members of the Tank Top Army are training in the gym on the 23rd floor. Tank Top Master, there's no choice. Send them out. It was obvious they didn't have much faith in him. After all, Tank Top Master was ranked low among the S-class. Headquarters Tower, 23rd floor gym. Tank Top Master was in the middle of training while talking with his men. Just a few days ago, I realized Kamui's psychic power holds nearly world-ending force. If I don't get stronger soon, I won't stand a chance against something like that. He spoke in a deep voice. But I know a way to overcome psychic powers. The answer lies in the tank top itself. The tank top is the source of strength, and to wield that power, one must become a man worthy of wearing it. The moment his words fell, a staff member rushed in, face pale with urgency. Tank Top Master, sir. A massive weapon is approaching the headquarters. Please intercept it at once. The worker didn't say it outright, but in truth, they only hoped Tank Top Master and his men could stall until reinforcements arrived. Upon hearing the news, Tank Top Master charged out of the building without hesitation, leading his squad. Then they saw it, a colossal steel beast that took their breath away. Its shape resembled a mechanical dog, standing on 4 legs, its back dome-like like a turtle's shell. But what was most terrifying was its sheer size, even larger than the headquarters itself, giving the impression that it could flatten the tower with a single push. It's huge! But compared to that spaceship from before, it doesn't even come close. Tank Top Master immediately powered up, ready to charge the steel beast. All of you, stand back. He dashed forward and pressed both hands against the monster's leg, trying to stop it with sheer physical strength. Stay right where you are, aha. Roaring, he unleashed his full power. Just then, the steel beast's head released a swarm of spherical drones. What are those? Don't tell me this giant thing is actually a mothership? The tank top army rushed to intercept, but those drones, though called small, were much larger than an average human. One after another, the men were knocked aside. Ugh! Only Tank Top Master managed to grapple with one drone, flipping it overhead and slamming it to pieces. Just watch, Kamui, one day, the power of my tank top will surpass even you. His men cheered, and his fighting spirit burned hotter. But at that moment, the one controlling the steel beast, Metal Knight, finally took notice of him. Tank Top Master, what are you doing? It spoke? Hearing the steel monster's voice, Tank Top Master and his men froze in shock. You're Metal Knight? Tank Top Master raised his head in disbelief. That's right. I've taken full responsibility for the reconstruction project here. Metal Knight replied calmly. And I'm very busy. That's why I'll be using the fastest approach. The work will be completed in 10 days at most. Tank Top Master was stunned, his worldview shaken. Rebuild all of Old A City's ruins in just 10 days? That was impossible. If it were up to him, it would take several days just to clear part of the debris. So this was the power of machines? Step aside. Don't get in the way. Since Tank Top Master was blocking the path, the steel beast under Metal Knight's control casually kicked him away. I lost again. He shouted as his body was sent flying. But the very next day, Tank Top Master was back in the headquarters gym, pushing himself through brutal training. He showed no trace of discouragement. If anything, he was even more determined and relentless. 79,999. 80,000. 80,001. For squats alone, he was training in sets of 100,000. He had even hung a banner on the wall behind him. Defeat psychic powers. Defeat mechanical power. That day's result, Tank Top Master lost. Chapter 123, The Panicked Loris. On the same day the Dark Matter Pirates incident ended, Shinji and Boros first went to the spaceship, since many low-level combatants were still inside. When they arrived at the compartment where those fighters were gathered, a group of strange-looking aliens rushed toward them. Lord Boros. Did we win? It was only then that they noticed the human standing at Boros's side. Because they had been kept inside the compartment the whole time, they knew nothing of the battle that had taken place, and naturally didn't recognize Shinji. No, Boros gave a slight nod. I lost. He is the true victor. As he spoke, Boros looked toward Shinji beside him. What? Lord Boros, how is that possible? This human, he actually defeated Lord Boros? So, he will be the father of my future children? The low-level fighters were stunned, unable to accept the reality before them, and the last one lost all hope. Lord Boros was the cosmic overlord, undefeated ever since his followers had tracked him across the stars. Nobody had ever imagined they would see the day he was defeated. And if Boros was beaten, didn't that mean they too would face his fate? In the cruel universe, the losers were always purged. Realizing this, fear instantly spread across their faces. We're doomed! It's over for all of us. They'll wipe us out completely. Do we even have a chance to escape? If even Lord Boros couldn't win, there's no way we can get away. Mom. I just want to go home. Seeing them in despair, convinced their lives were over, Shinji finally spoke. You don't need to panic. As long as you don't cause trouble, I won't kill you. Huh? Really? You won't kill us? The alien fighters stared in disbelief. Of course it's true. I'll let you live, but you'll stay on Earth and work honestly. Do you understand? Shinji said plainly. Understood. The aliens all nodded at once. Being spared was already more than they could hope for. None of them dared to complain. Then, what about Lord Boros? One of them finally asked. I intend to join the Hero Association, the same organization Shinji belongs to, Boros replied. From now on, his commands are my commands. Do you all understand? Yes, understood. The aliens nodded furiously. After that, Shinji gave them their first assignment, guard the spaceship and repair the damage from the recent battle. After such an event, there would surely be many who coveted the ship. Metal Knight, for instance. Though, Metal Knight probably wouldn't stoop to outright banditry. The real concern was the organization, the group responsible for creating the Machine God series. Little was known about it beyond its ominous name, the organization. While the Hero Association and the Monster Association were locked in battle, Metal Knight had stayed out of the fight because he had a more troublesome enemy in his sights, namely the organization. If Metal Knight had invested his dragon-level mecha production into that battle, it would have made things much easier for the heroes. Since the organization also focuses on machines, it was only natural for them to be interested in Boros's ship. That was why Shinji assigned those low-level fighters to both repair the ship and guard it. By the way, Boros. Shinji turned to ask, does your ship have any stealth functions? Stealth. If you mean the kind that prevents detection by certain devices, yes. If you mean being completely invisible to the naked eye, then no. Boros answered. In that case, forget it. Just leave the ship parked here. Shinji said, raising his shoulders. They were in an uninhabited area far from A City and the other cities. Originally, Shinji believed that if the ship could cloak, they could hover it above the headquarters tower or over the uninhabited zone of Z City, and then no one would want it. But since the ship had no visual stealth, they had no choice. A vessel tens of thousands of meters long hovering over Z City's wasteland would be visible to almost everyone and would cause panic. That was out of the question. As for above the headquarters tower, that might be possible, but only after the ship was fully repaired. With the low-level fighters assigned, Shinji returned home. Boros had nothing pressing to do, so he followed Shinji. The headquarters was still in chaos, so Boros would have to wait a couple of days before applying to join the Hero Association. Only the headquarters could grant him unconditional entry. If he applied at another branch, Boros would have to take the Hero Certification exam, which would be humiliating for someone of his stature. If Boros actually took the exam, he might even produce absurd answers like Saitama did on the written test and end up ranked C-class. That would be worse. As I have said earlier, this planet is called Earth. Since you are new here, I'll show you around. Shinji led Boros inside and spoke as they entered. But he had apparently forgotten something. Yes, there are many things I have not seen before. Boros nodded slightly. When he first walked into the uninhabited zone of Z City with Shinji, he felt a strangely familiar presence, but he could not place it and did not ask. At that moment, Shinji's phone rang. Hello? Get over here now. Shinji heard Loris's voice. Her tone was urgent, but she deliberately kept it low. Hearing Loris, Shinji suddenly remembered what he had forgotten. He hung up and told Boros, sorry, something came up. Wait here for a bit. I am not a kid, so you can go. Boros did not pry. Because of his height, he nearly bumped his head entering the house. After pondering for a while in the living room, he sat on the sofa. Shinji teleported to the higher floor room where Loris stayed. Seeing Shinji appear out of nowhere, Loris grabbed his collar with both hands, panic written across her face. Why did you bring my brother here? I just saw him through the window. If I had not reacted quickly and hidden, he almost would have noticed me. Chapter 124, Fragile and Obedient. Sorry. A lot happened today and I accidentally forgot about your matter. Shinji forced an awkward smile as he explained. Man, he totally forgot this alien hoe. Accidentally? You just casually forgot what I asked you to do? Loris grabbed Shinji's collar and yanked hard. Calm down, Missy. Get more forceful and I would get hard, you know. And you don't want your brother to see you. Shinji said calmly. At that, Loris let go. Shinji thought to himself that bringing Boros along had been effective pressure. Although he could have used Boros to force Loris into obedience, he decided to tell her the truth instead. He had promised to let Loris go after his fight with Boros, and there was no need to keep stringing her along. Calm down and think. Why would Boros and I be here together? Shinji asked. Loris paused, then something clicked, and she asked in surprise, "You and my brother didn't get into a fight?" Because she was an alien and the infinite Tsukuyomi affected only humans, she had no idea what had happened during the battle between Shinji and Boros. "We already finished." Shinji sounded slightly exasperated. "Already finished? And you are still alive?" Loris could not hide her shock. She had always believed her brother, the cosmic overlord, far outclassed Shinji. Subconsciously, she assumed that if they had fought, Shinji would be either dead or gravely wounded. But Shinji looked completely fine. As she examined him, she noticed an obvious change. His skin had taken on a sickly pallor, his clothes were unfamiliar, and his hair had turned pale white. Currently, his Rinne Sharingan on his forehead are closed, otherwise, they would attract even more attention. "What happened to you? Why do you look like this?" Loris asked. "I fought your brother and turned into this," Shinji answered casually. He then deactivated the Ten Tails Jinchuriki mode, also called the Sage of Six Paths mode. His hair returned to black, his skin normalized, and the Rinnegan Sharingan on his forehead vanished. It seemed the system allowed him to switch freely between his normal form and Ten Tails Jinchuriki mode. With a single thought, he could re-enter that mode and activate the Rinnegan Sharingan, tapping into the power of Kagaya. "That makes sense. You can think of what you saw earlier as my battle mode," Shinji explained. "Oh." Loris nodded and did not question it further. Her brother also had a battle form, the meteor burst state, so it was not strange that a powerful opponent like Shinji would have something similar. As for Loris, although she was of Boros's race and his sister, she lacked the internal energy to sustain the terrible consumption of the meteor burst state, so she could not use it yet. "Also, your brother and I have already decided the outcome. By the promise I made earlier, I can now let you leave Earth," Shinji said. "I will take you to an empty area, we will bring out your ship, and then you can depart from Earth." "Decided the outcome? Who won? It cannot be you, right?" Loris asked immediately. She did not believe her brother had lost, yet Shinji stood before her unharmed. She knew her brother's nature, in battle he always fought to the death. Before now Boros had never lost, so his opponents always died. What stunned Loris the most was that both her brother and Shinji were perfectly fine, and that they had even come back to Shinji's house together. "Of course, I won," Shinji smirked and patted his own shoulders. "That's impossible," Loris could hardly believe it. "If you do not believe me, ask your brother. He is sitting in my living room right now." Shinji was not interested in arguing. "Of course. Then never mind. I do not want him to notice me." Loris made it clear she did not want to meet Boros under any circumstances. "He will not be leaving Earth, so you do not need to worry. Ultimately, everything is up to you. If you want to leave right now, you can," Shinji said. "Why, you actually defeated my brother?" Loris asked again, clearly bothered and still unable to accept it. "I told you the truth," Shinji answered wearily. "Huh," Loris studied him with a mix of surprise and suspicion. "I never imagined you could beat my brother. Maybe you are the true cosmic overlord?" Though incredulous, she could not entirely deny the possibility. After all, if her brother had won, everything on this planet would probably be destroyed. The fact that the Z-City wasteland was calm proved he had not. There was still the chance of a draw, though. "There are always people stronger than you. I am hardly a cosmic overlord," Shinji replied calmly. "Stronger than you?" Loris looked puzzled. That should be obvious. Shinji did not plan to tell her who he meant. He could not reveal it without Saitama's permission. "So, when will you leave Earth?" "Leave before your brother notices, though, even if he does notice it, it probably would not change much." Shinji came to the topic at hand. "I'll decide after a while. Staying on this planet for a few days has been interesting," Loris answered. "Fine. Tell me when you want to go," Shinji replied. At that moment, Shinji returned to the living room and found another person there. It was Fubuki. She sat unusually meekly, cold sweat on her face showing how nervous she was to be near Boros. When she saw Shinji, she hopped behind him like a frightened rabbit and clutched his sleeve. "Why is he here?" Fubuki asked in a high whisper. As a human, Fubuki had also been affected by the infinite Tsukuyomi earlier, so she knew how terrifying Boros could be. Seeing her suddenly so fragile and obedient made Shinji feel a little uncomfortable. Chapter 125, A Couple's Quarrel? 5 minutes earlier. Fubuki had come by like she often did. As usual, Shinji's front door was unlocked. Nearly every time she visited, there was someone else in his home. But this time, she came mainly to make sure he was safe, since she still didn't know the outcome of his battle with the so-called Cosmic Overlord. The moment she stepped inside, she saw the very Cosmic Overlord, sitting calmly on the sofa. Seeing the figure of destruction and chaos itself, her whole body froze in shock. Boros turned his head toward her and spoke with calm. "Well, hello there. You must be Shinji's friend? Come in and sit." Ugh. Just that look from him drained the color from Fubuki's face. She could never have imagined that the same alien emperor who planned to destroy Earth would be sitting in Shinji's house. Because she had been under the infinite Tsukuyomi's influence earlier, all she had seen was Boros's collapsing star-roaring cannon tearing through the planet's surface. She hadn't witnessed what happened afterward, when Shinji dragged him into the primordial sphere. So she had no idea how things ended. From her perspective, it looked as if Shinji had been gravely wounded or forced to flee, with the Cosmic Overlord chasing him down to finish the job. When Boros casually referred to her as Shinji's friend, Fubuki became even more certain that he was here for revenge. No one in their right mind would have guessed the truth. Boros hadn't just lost the fight, he had ended up as Shinji's companion. Although panic rose in her chest, Fubuki kept her composure. She knew there was no way she could resist Boros, and running was impossible. So, forcing herself to act, she sat stiffly across from him, her movements awkward and restrained. Boros noticed how frightened she seemed and was just about to explain when Shinji happened to return. "Fubuki." Hearing his voice, she turned quickly and lit up with relief. "Shinji! You're alive!" She darted behind him like a startled rabbit, clutching his sleeve. "Did he come here to kill you?" she whispered nervously. "No, you've got it wrong," Shinji said with a laugh. "He's my friend. His name is Boros." "Eh? Friend? Why?" Fubuki blinked in surprise. Just a short while ago, the two had been mortal enemies locked in a life-or-death battle. How could they suddenly be friends? "You two, weren't you fighting to the death just now?" She raised a brow. "The battle is over. I lost to Shinji, but he didn't finish me off. So now, we're friends." When Boros said the word friends, his voice hesitated noticeably. Clearly, the concept was still foreign to him. After all, ever since he had become the Cosmic Overlord, he had never once shared an equal bond with anyone. The only reason he could now was because Shinji chose to treat him that way. In reality, Boros already followed Shinji's lead in almost everything. "I see," Fubuki finally relaxed a little, though she still stayed close behind Shinji. "Fubuki, what brings you here this time?" Shinji asked. "Nothing much. Earlier, for some reason, I saw the battle between you and the Cosmic Overlord, so I came to check if you were safe. But instead, I ran into him," Fubuki explained, then glanced over Shinji carefully. "But looking at you now, you don't seem injured at all?" She couldn't hide her shock. The scenes she had witnessed were nothing short of world-ending, a destructive force beyond imagination. Yet Shinji didn't even have a scratch on him. Not even his clothes were torn. In truth, his original clothes had been destroyed. During his transformation into the Ten-Tails Jinchuriki, he had manifested the Six Paths cloak. That cloak had been damaged toward the end, but it could repair itself, which was why he now looked perfectly untouched. "Not exactly. I just recovered, that's all," Shinji said vaguely. He had no intention of explaining his Anaji. "Well, he had no reason to disclose any of his powers to anyone. He wasn't in some kind of comic where he would explain his powers and reveal his weakness. I see, Fubuki nodded slowly. Well, since you're safe, I'll head back now. She turned to leave. Her sudden change in attitude, without the usual insistence on staying, caught Shinji off guard. You seem different all of a sudden. Or, are you still afraid of Boros? He asked. No, she shook her head gently, lowering her gaze. This whole situation made me realize the truth. You're no longer that B-class hero. You're someone who defeated the Cosmic Overlord. There's no way you'd ever look twice at our Fubuki group. It would be like recruiting an elephant for the ant army. Until today, she had never truly grasped the full extent of his power. Only after seeing the scale of his clash with Boros did she finally understand how far beyond her imagination he stood. Shinji stayed quiet for a moment. That's not the issue. It was never about looking down on you. I'd never thought less of any of you. I just don't like attaching myself to any organization. I prefer to walk my own path, free and independent. At least he was glad she had finally come to terms with it. That much, in a way, was thanks to the infinite Tsukuyomi. I understand now. Anyway, thank you for putting up with my stubbornness all this time. It was clear Fubuki had realized the vast gulf between her and Shinji, and how patient he had always been with her. Her tone was so sincere that Shinji actually felt a little unaccustomed to it. It's good that you thought it through. But there's no need to thank me. If you ever run into trouble in the future, you can always come to me for help. He gave her a reassuring smile. A faint glimmer of relief softened her sorrowful expression, as if she had found a small comfort. At that moment, Boros, who had been quietly watching, suddenly spoke. Are you two having a couple's quarrel? I can leave to have some husband and wife moment? As an alien, his understanding of such things was simplistic. In his view, a woman visiting a man's home, with a bond that seemed close, naturally meant they were husband and wife. He just didn't know why the two appeared to be at odds. Huh? His blunt question left Shinji stunned. Husband and wife? Fubuki froze as well, utterly dumbfounded. That's the end of this tale for now. Thank you for watching and I'll see you in part 6. Peace.